Chapter 848. The Golden Rock was shocked and immediately flew over to save him. However, Li Yunxin waved his hand and threw out snowflake-like spell symbols. A brilliant haze suddenly appeared in the air, and countless soldiers appeared on the haze. The leader of the army was a heavenly king in golden armor, holding an octagonal pagoda that shone brightly in his hand. On his left was a young divine general with 3 eyes and a jade-like face, holding a silver halberd. On his right was a young general who was treading on a pair of fiery wheels and holding a red-tasseled spear. Behind the 3 of them were thousands of soldiers, with flags fluttering in the wind and a tight formation. As soon as they appeared, they covered the sky and the sun, stretching for miles. The Golden Rock bumped into the front of the formation. The pagoda-bearing heavenly king didn't say anything. He raised his eyebrows, pointed out his fingers, and the tower in his hand spun and flew out. Every time it spun, it grew a little bigger, and when it reached the Golden Rock, it covered him. The 2 generals on both sides held weapons and hacked or stabbed at the tower. Just in time for the Golden Rock, the Rock King roared and smashed the tower into pieces. The rest of the divine soldiers also rushed over. Normally, when thousands of soldiers surrounded one person, only a few people in the middle could fight them. However, these divine soldiers were like shadows and didn't stop each other. The layers of golden light merged together, and the combination of the golden light was comparable to the blazing sun. For a moment, the Golden Rock was cut countless times, and a layer of the golden light was broken. These divine soldiers and generals, and even the giant who was fighting against the giant tree, were actually not very powerful. That giant was also a figure that many people in Li Yunxin's previous world knew. If he had been created the same way he created the great saint, he would have been another powerful grand elder. However, when he created the Monkey King, Li Yunxin used the power of the 9 seas. The 9 seas were vast, and the entire 9 seas was almost as big as half of the Midland. If he used such a great power again, the Golden Rock would definitely sense it. Therefore he discounted it and only drew some magic. Such a creation shouldn't be a threat to a grand elder. However, their bodies were not filled with spiritual chi, but with the power of the netherworld. With the netherworld force, these small fries could at least hurt the Supreme Rock King, even though it was just like an ant biting an elephant. However, as the saying goes, many ants can bite an elephant to death. These countless small wounds stacked together could also cause considerable damage. The Golden Rock seemed to be anxious and angry. With a loud roar, it broke free from the heavy encirclement. Golden light radiated from his body. Just like Tang Wakshu, hundreds of divine weapons turned into green light and scattered. He had originally thought that these things were similar to puppets. They had a human form but did not have much intelligence. Who would have thought that these divine soldiers and divine generals actually knew when to advance and when to retreat? Seeing that he was powerful, he immediately retreated far away. It was unknown what the pagoda-bearing heavenly king said, but he formed the formation again. The Golden Rock crashed into the array as if it had crashed into a large net. Immediately, his body became sluggish. He could only exert force in the air, but he could not move forward at all. At this moment, Li Yunxin's spear struck the huge parasol tree. It was as if a heavenly god had used a huge hammer to smash the huge tree as a nail. With a loud bang, the ankle-like tentacles at the bottom of the huge tree completely collapsed. It was smashed back into the ground. The Golden Rock, who was already trapped in the net, spat out blood. Its body flashed with golden light, and it looked like a light bulb whose filament was about to snap. At this moment, the pagoda-bearing heavenly king took out a pitch-black pagoda that looked like an iron rod, and it hit the Golden Rock King squarely. Thus, the Golden Rock King's protective golden light collapsed again. It finally revealed its true appearance. It was not an old man with white hair and beard as the cat demon had said. Instead, it was a middle-aged man with a head full of black hair. However, it only revealed its true appearance for a moment before the Golden Rock King protected its body with golden light again. It was very far away from Li Yunxin, and there were many divine weapons and divine generals between them, so the latter did not see it. At this moment, Li Yunxin was launching his second attack on the huge parasol tree. After that attack, the wriggling vines on the ground immediately lost their vitality and sank into the ground. It was as if countless venomous snakes were startled and snuck back into their nests. However, the huge tree itself was even more agile. Its thick branches danced wildly as if it was angry because of the pain. Li Yunxin's second attack was aimed at the place where the Pangu giant had cut open the tree trunk. That place was still dark and gloomy to this day. The darkness was unusual, and it was definitely not because the light was dim. This was because when he used his divine sense to investigate the wound, he found that it was like a black hole. It absorbed everything, divine sense, spiritual power, netherworld power. It was as if everything would be devoured by it, and there was no chance of escape. When the ancient god was crushed by the huge tree, Li Yunxin took a look. The huge axe in his hand was chipped. The part that had been cut into the huge parasol tree's trunk had disappeared without a trace. This was a very strange thing. He had drawn this ancient god, and there was a subtle connection between him and it. He could clearly sense this thing getting hurt, collapsing, and being devoured. However, he did not feel anything when the axe was chipped. This meant that even the connection between him and it had been devoured. But this connection was extremely similar to the connection between the river of fate. The huge parasol tree was like a pillar that supported the heavens and earth, while Li Yunxin was like a speck of dust in front of it. But now that this speck of dust was about to launch his second attack, the huge tree immediately retracted its branches and firmly protected the wound. It was as if Li Yunxin's attack would take its life. However, these branches were like rotten wood in front of Li Yunxin's all-out attack. The extremely overbearing netherworld power turned them into ashes in the blink of an eye. From afar, one could only see that the huge tree's branches were disintegrating at a terrifying speed, while a dark light shot straight into the tree trunk. The huge tree seemed to have really become a sentient creature. It curled up in pain. Like a centipede, it retracted its branches and curled up its indomitable thick trunk with amazing flexibility, completely wrapping that speck of dust in it. It was also at this moment that the divine soldiers and divine generals above the clouds suddenly stopped moving. Like a marionette whose strings had been cut, their colors quickly faded in the next moment, turning into spots of light that filled the sky and dissipating. The golden rock immediately broke free. This supreme rock king's protective golden light had been shattered by Li Yunxin more than a dozen times, and he was restrained by these soldiers and couldn't move at all. His face was originally full of fear and anger, as if he knew that doomsday was coming. But at this moment he stood high in the sky. He first let out a long breath, adjusted the spiritual power in his body, and then sneered, no longer looking like before. Li Yunxin, can you still get away? Because of his words, the huge tree that was originally curled up like a mountain in the sky slowly stretched out, making it look more like a centipede, revealing Wei River Dragon King. At this moment he seemed to be growing on this tree. Chapter 849. The lower half of Li Yunxin's body sank into the hole where the giant tree was split open, as if he was soaking in water. The space around him was slightly distorted, like the air on the road in midsummer. But no pain could be seen on his face, and he even looked a little surprised. Because until now he didn't feel anything else, except that his strength was slowly fading away. It was as if his whole body was soaked in a pool of warm water, and he was so lazy and comfortable that he didn't want to move. The spear just now hit right on this wound. It was also then that he realized he had fallen into a trap. The battle between Shinryu and the Golden Rock, the story of one scale three feathers, was well known in the world. Therefore, when the giant Pengu's axe hurt the giant tree, but hit a golden feather that fell from the sky, he suddenly became alert. He wanted to get that thing to see what it was, but the Golden Rock got it first. Then he realized it was something important that he didn't know. The Golden Rock was very nervous about it. Then he attacked the Golden Rock, but after the first 13 spear strikes, he couldn't hurt the Supreme Rock King anymore. It was like the game he played in his previous life. Once a monster's HP dropped to a certain level, it would be locked down, and it would be difficult to hurt it. At this time he shouldn't attack, but should think if there was something wrong with his fighting style, and the solution to the problem was elsewhere. Therefore he connected the two things and made a bold inference. The giant parasol tree that was hurt by the Pengu giant was the main body. Because the aura and spiritual power of the two were extremely similar. He used the power of the netherworld on the wolf spine raging lion spear, and it was very effective against the golden light of the golden rock. The golden light was formed by spiritual power, and it was very weak in front of his more domineering power of the netherworld. But with every spear strike, the power of the netherworld was swallowed. It didn't dissipate into the world but disappeared just like that. This situation also happened to the giant parasol tree. The golden rock's demonic power was strange. It looked like spiritual power, but it was actually something else. But he felt that this was normal. Because the Supreme Rock King's realm was also very strange. It was a bird born in this world, but it was so powerful. According to Shinmu and the others, the Supreme was actually a passage. The auras of the two worlds were interconnected, and the passageway was filled. Thus, one could break through the shackles of common sense and become a top-notch expert. But why was the Golden Rock doing this? Thus he went straight for the giant parasol tree. Unexpectedly, the fear, caution, and even panic that Golden Rock had shown before were all acting. He was about to ask Li Yunxin to attack the giant tree. Li Yunxin sighed and looked up at the Golden Rock, who was slowly approaching him. I can't escape for the time being. I've been hitting geese all my life, only to be pecked in the eye by geese. The Golden Rock did not speak. It seemed to be thinking about something. Li Yunxin said, How are things now? Want to kill me? I'm afraid it won't be easy. There are people from the Nether Realm behind you. Of course I won't kill you so easily. The Pring King made a few hand seals, and the spiritual chi that gathered around him became more intense. The golden light on his body surged and condensed into something that seemed to be real again, coating him with a layer of armor. Moreover, it's not like you don't have the strength to fight. He looked at Li Yunxin in the golden light. It will devour your strength, but it will take some time to exhaust you. During this time, I want to ask you, did you come to deal with me because of Li Chunfeng's instigation, or because of the Nether Realm? Li Yunxin laughed. Li Chunfeng? Aren't you two on the same side? Now that things have come to this, who are you putting on a show for? The Golden Rock sneered non-committally. I don't want to get involved in the matters between you two. My killing intent is not as strong as yours. Everything I've done is because of injustice. Many years ago, people from the Nether Realm told me some things in the world, which made me feel that this world was just a small world, as if I was imprisoned in a prison. Then I thought that I would be the one to break out of this prison. He stopped smiling and stared at Li Yunxin. In the end, it's going to be you. Li Chunfeng did something bad which made me very unhappy. Although you're not like him, you're still in my way. Now that things have come to this, you can only blame yourself for being reckless. However, Li Yunxin appeared very calm at this time. This was in sharp contrast to his previous appearance. Just a few breaths ago, his spear momentum was like a dragon, unreservedly using all his strength, as if he was eager to kill the Golden Rock. But now that he was trapped, it was as if his whole body was immersed in ice water, and he quickly calmed down. He smiled slightly and stroked the long spear in his hand. I thought you hated me because of love. I said, how could a person who could do such a perverted thing as giving birth to a daughter with his half-daughter be a prisoner of love? Now that I look at it, it's because you slept in an airtight iron house. Later, someone woke you up but didn't tell you how to run out. That's why you hate me so much. The Golden Rock was slightly startled by his attitude and words. No one knew what he thought of, but the hostility in his tone also lessened. What you said is very appropriate. It's not me. It's Mr. Lu Sun. Who is it? Li Yunxin thought for a moment. A writer, thinker, and revolutionary. He wrote this analogy when he was writing the preface to a book he wrote called The Scream. The Golden Rock thought for a while before saying, So he's a scholar of the secular world. Such a person isn't worth your time. Li Yunxin smiled. I want to tell you that I don't like to be greedy for credit. I don't like to take on other people's projects. So I can understand your resentment at this time. As for me looking for you to kill you, it's because you're also in my way. I'm going to save this world soon and turn it into a new world. A powerful variable like you can't exist in a new world, so our only choice is to kill you or... The Golden Rock said in a deep voice, What? You want me to stand on your side? Li Yunxin shook his head. There's no such option. You're so strong that I can't rest assured. I mean, you can cripple your martial arts. Hand over your body and only keep your soul. In fact, even so, you still have a chance to become a Grand Supreme again. But it's already a big concession. A smile appeared on the Golden Rock's face. This was a genuine smile of extreme anger. Li Yunxin sighed and said, Look, I knew you wouldn't accept this method. So I didn't offend you by saying this before, it shows my sincerity. After saying this, he paused for a moment. I don't feel well. I'm getting weaker and weaker. Because this tree is not a tree. The Golden Rock looked at him. It's a bottomless abyss that leads to another world. All your power is slowly being led to another world. In that case, you don't intend to give me a way out, nor do you intend to give me a way out. Then let's be destroyed together. You want to save the world? But now I want to destroy it. Li Yunxin opened his mouth. I see. Damn it. He raised his head and stared straight at the Golden Rock. I see. The people over there said they want your Grand Supreme body. But there are so many bodies of saints on Cloud Mountain, why must they want yours? So it's because of this that they want to kill you. You also came from somewhere else? As he said this, his eyes suddenly widened. You look. The golden light slowly faded from the Grand Supreme Rock King's body, revealing a cold face. It was Li Chunfeng's face. Chapter 850. You. Li Yunxin paused. He took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. Finally he said, "You look very much like Li Chunfeng." There was a slight mocking smile on his indifferent face. But the smile soon disappeared and turned into a slight anger. "It's not that I look like him," the Golden Rock said seriously. "It's that he looks like me." Li Yunxin took 2 deep breaths to make himself less breathless. In fact, these instinctive movements were retained from when he was still a human. It was like a ritual which made him feel at ease. "Tell me," he said. "I really want to know." The Golden Rock smiled. "You want to know? What do you want in exchange for this secret?" "Use his God Soul diagram." "I have his God Soul diagram." The Golden Rock smiled again. "That thing? I'm not interested. After all, I was the one who created it." "You? Made it?" "Made it." He looked at Li Yunxin and raised his hand to point at him. "Before you ask, look at yourself first. Now that a quarter of an hour has passed, you have lost most of your strength. A grand elder like you was refined into a grand elder. Strength is the essence of your existence. Now your strength is fading and so are you." As he said this, Li Yunxin's body began to slowly turn pale, so white that it was slightly transparent. The wolf spine angry lion spear in his hand also began to tremble slightly, as if it realized that its master was about to die and it did not intend to obey him anymore. Li Yunxin raised his hand, looked at it and shook his head. "It doesn't matter. I just want to know the truth now." The Golden Rock sneered. "The truth? Is it more important than your life? If that's the case, you're really boring. I was wondering what you would do when you saw my true face, but if you tell me that you don't want to fight anymore, I won't keep you." Li Yunxin frowned. "Isn't that exactly what you want? You hate me for standing in your way. So now I'll use my life in exchange for that secret." "Damn it." He suddenly cursed. "None of them are good. Those people never knew what it meant to be honest. There were times when I could have walked away, out of it. But in the end, every time I wanted to leave, I realized that I was being used, so I wanted to figure it out every time. This time I thought the truth had been revealed, but in the end, I became their tool to kill you. Rock King, honestly speaking, do you still want to continue fighting for them when you are in my situation?" "I'm tired now." Li Yunxin gritted his teeth and said, "I want to give up and die. I wanted to show those people that not everyone was willing to be the gun in their hands to survive. You're right, the best way to get back at those people over there is to destroy the world and everyone will perish together. At that time, they will reflect on whether they are pure-blooded bastards or not." The Golden Rock raised its eyebrows as if it was surprised by his words. He thought for a moment and said, "Fine." But he had to wait another quarter of an hour. "In another quarter of an hour you won't be a threat anymore. I'm not afraid that things might change if I tell you that secret." Li Yunxin spread his hands and said, "Whatever." Then the 2 of them fell into silence just like before they started the fight. The giant tree was floating in the air. The sunlight was dim in the sky, while the ground was covered with glistening gravel. This scene didn't seem to be in the Midland or the Heaven Sphere. Instead, it seemed to be in a strange alien world. After a while, Li Yunxin said, "It's so boring to fight with you." But the Golden Rock only stared at him. He was fully focused and didn't get distracted at all. He should be prepared for any strange moves that Jihao might make. Li Yunxin sighed and said, "It's true. I originally thought that my final battle would be grand and magnificent, but in the end I was tricked by you to this extent. Apparently, in this world, anyone who wants to be fair and square will die very quickly." While talking, he took out a folding fan from his sleeve. The Golden Rock's body immediately glowed with a dim light. "What are you doing? If you wait any longer, I won't be able to build a magic formation in the air." Li Yunxin raised his hand and drew 2 human figures in the air. He moved very slowly so that the Golden Rock could see him clearly. Then he told the Golden Rock what he was going to do next. "Now I'm going to build 2 bodies for Lu Gongzan and the 9th young master. I can only build 2 bodies that can contain their souls with the art of painting. No cultivation level, no magic. Just a container. When these 2 people land on the ground, they are just 2 ordinary people. They can't pose any threat to you." The Golden Rock frowned and raised his hand. When he was about to use his magic to erase the magic formation, he heard Li Yunxin say seriously, "I advise you not to do that. You trapped me in here and you want to drain my power slowly because you don't want to fight me head-on. This way you can preserve your power and deal with Li Chunfeng. Don't you believe that he's not dead? But these 2 people are my friends." Li Yunxin used the extremely weak demon power in his palm to protect the painting formation in the air. "I just don't want them to die with me. After I die they can still live for many years. If you don't let me do this I'll fight you to the death. I guarantee that I have a way to seriously injure you, so that Li Chunfeng can kill you effortlessly. The golden rock stared at him seriously for a while, then put down his hand. So, Li Yunxin used a dozen breaths' time to finish the 2 painting formations. Then he reached out his hand to grab 2 green shadows from the folding fan and threw them into the formation. A mysterious light shone, and the bodies drawn with demon power became real. The 2 appeared in the air and fell down. Li Yunxin used his magic to catch them in time. Lu Gongzan already knew what happened when he was in the fan, but Li Yunxin didn't talk to him. Only then could he speak. Exen, Li Yunxin pointed his finger and interrupted him. Old Lu. You know I don't like to fight to the death. Take little 9 and leave. If you can go back to the city of Wei, tell the people they're not to care about anything. The world is hopeless. Again. He thought for a while and sighed. If you want to sacrifice me after I die. I used to like to drink the bejeweled nectar wine from the Cheonghua building in the city of Wei. But the Cheonghua building has been destroyed. I've tasted something similar in the Donghai kingdom. You can go there to avoid the disaster. After saying this he looked at the golden rock. Look, they are both mortals. The golden rock king scanned the 2 with his divine sense and said nothing. The other one is unconscious. Li Yunxin said, let them go. Help me send them 100 miles away. The golden rock thought for a while and did as he said. With a wave of his hand, the 2 turned into flowing light and shot to the sky. He then retracted his gaze and looked at Li Yunxin. It's meaningless for you to do this. There are demon soldiers in a radius of hundreds of miles. These 2 mortals, one of whom is unconscious, won't survive in the wilderness. I'm just doing my best. Li Yunxin smiled slightly. Golden Rock King, you can tell me now. I feel like I'm about to fall apart. If you're more careful you'll lose your heroic spirit. What he said was indeed the truth. The current Li Yunxin had already become translucent, and even her internal organs could be seen. It could be said that she was completely unobstructed. As for the power of the netherworld in his body, it was also extremely weak. Only black light was slowly flowing in his translucent body. That was his meridians. The golden rock showed a very faint smile on his face. Okay. But in fact, I don't believe that you will die here. People of the painting Taoism have many ways to hide the spirit. But after this, you've lost all your demon power and it will take a long time for you to recover. What I need to do is only for these few days. As for that Li Chunfeng, do you know where he came from? I do. You're not from this world. You're from another world that's hard to imagine. Haha. The golden rock laughed dryly. His smile faded and he was silent for a while. It seemed that mentioning the past made him very emotional, and he was the first to fall into his memories. After a while, he said, what's harder to imagine is how hard it is to imagine. In our previous world, it's hard to find anything in this world that can compare our appearance or the way we exist. Even if we don't talk about appearance, the way we think is completely different. In other words, there's nothing in this world that can be used as a reference or an analogy for our so-called thinking. Li Chunfeng should have told you how I came to this world. But how much did he say? Li Yunxin held the trembling wolf spine raging lion spear tightly, and absorbed some of the power of the netherworld from the spear so that he could speak. Not much. He only mentioned it once. That's because he didn't want to mention that stupid thing. The golden rock laughed coldly. When I first came to this world, I didn't know anything. Because the way I think has changed. In my previous world, man is power and power is man. But in this world I need to find a body, what you call a spirit. You should know that from an outsider's point of view, what's the most powerful thing in this world? Is definitely not human. It should be demons. In my previous world, powerful strength means powerful spirituality and powerful rationality. So when I was choosing a body in this world, I chose a demon. It's that rock demon. Li Yunxin held his spear. 5,000 years ago when the Daotong Kenzo conducted demon experiments in the Tongtian swamp area, the rock demon in the enclosure. He gathered his strength for a while and then said, but it's not wrong. Demons are also very powerful. Later on you also became the Grand Supreme. If I only seek to live in this world, naturally it's not wrong. The golden rock stared at Li Yunxin, and the look in his eyes became strange, but I want to do something else. Li Yunxin was all too familiar with this kind of look, he often felt it himself. It was the kind of look that had something on his mind and wanted to tell everyone in the world, but he couldn't say it first because of the situation. Chapter 851. But he didn't ask further. It was because he knew he couldn't get any answers. More importantly, he knew that the Rock King couldn't keep it a secret for long. Everything would be settled soon. He might be able to wait for it. So he listened patiently. When this kind of expression appeared on a person's face, that person would always be more willing to talk than before, even if only a little. I became a demon. But I found that once I entered the demon body, it was difficult to get out. But it's also normal. I entered the demon body and not the body of a dead thing. It's already a good choice. After all, when I first came to this world, I knew nothing about it. You keep talking about you. Li Yunxin asked with difficulty. Li Chunfeng he, humph. The Rock King snorted coldly. This will be told later. What I have to do, I have to be a man. So I cultivated and easily became a Grand Supreme. When I reached that level, there were many ways to think. You've seen the Sage of Calligrapher and Sage of Sword of this generation of Shenmen, and you've also seen the Sage of Sword of the previous generation. Aren't you curious about where they got the method to cultivate the samsara body? That's not the method of Shenmen. Now I can tell you that it's my method. It's also a method from my previous world. When I became a Grand Supreme and fought with Shenmen, they couldn't do anything to me. If the people of Shenmen mentioned this matter, they would say that they were kind and didn't want the world to suffer because of the fight between the Grand Supreme. But actually, it was because I taught them this method. They benefited from me and knew that I had skills other than their Shenmen Taoism, so they gave up. Since I became a Grand Supreme and established my foothold, I used the method of creating the samsara body to create Li Chunfeng. I asked him to continue doing that in a human body. That should have been more than 1,000 years ago. Li Yunxin smiled weakly. I see. Li Chunfeng, this guy actually said that he was you. Then it's easy to explain. He rested for a while before saying, it turns out that he wanted me to die, and you to die. That's why he conspired with you and me. Now that the two of us are fighting, he'll just sit there and reap the benefits. The Golden Rock looked at Li Yunxin and sighed pitifully. He can't accept it. I know what he's thinking, and that's why I want to use the least effort to defeat you. If it wasn't for the fact that I didn't want him to succeed, I wouldn't have exposed this thing. It was my only link to the world that had come before. You can say it's very strong. You can't get away now. But it's still very weak. Once you know the trick, you'll be able to break it very quickly. Unfortunately, you won't be able to find out. After saying this, he raised his hand. I've told you everything you wanted to hear. It's also because I respect you for being an expert who can face adversity head-on like me. Now that I've done my part, let me send you off. However, Li Yunxin sighed in a low voice. Rock King, this is a difficult matter. I can't die yet. His words stunned the Golden Rock for a moment. However, he immediately realized what Li Yunxin was going to do. Without hesitation, he immediately threw out a palm strike. But Li Yunxin finally let go of the wolf spine raging lion spear, which had been shaking more and more violently. The pale white spear had now turned into a pale green color. In an instant, countless thin snake-like things were moving on the spear, as if a withered bone was quickly regrowing flesh and blood. When the Golden Rock's palm struck down, it was directly penetrated by the spear. The body of a great demon was extremely strong, but in front of this spear, it was like a mortal's flesh and blood. He was shocked and in pain and immediately flew back for hundreds of feet. At this moment, he felt the earth shaking. It seemed that something had drilled out of the ground. In the next moment, a towering mountain appeared in the east. It was a giant, a pale blue giant. Even though there was still some distance between the giant and the spear, one could still see the snake-like flesh and blood on the giant's body, which were exactly the same as the spear. Under the flesh and blood, one could see countless wriggling eyeballs, which would numb one's scalp and make one shiver. The Golden Rock knew that thing. It was the skeleton that had been suppressed in the underground cave in the Midland. Although he did not participate in the previous battle in the Cloud Mountain, he had his own ways to know what had happened there. Therefore, he realized that the one that appeared in the east was very similar to the skeleton that had appeared in that battle. But obviously this one was stronger than the one at that time. It was no longer a skeleton. It had thick muscles and looked like a skinned person. Its terrifyingly large eye sockets even had a faint green light like a pair of eyeballs. It moved quickly and flexibly and was running towards them with big steps. You want to save your life with this thing? The golden light quickly gathered into the wound on the Golden Rock's palm, making it recover. But the great Demon King was still in pain and anger. Li Yunxin, just now, for a moment, I really believed what you said and had some respect for you. Now it seems, humph, is this the fair and square battle you want? Now, Li Yunxin seemed to have recovered some of his strength. His body was no longer transparent, as if it was going to disappear, and it was no longer difficult for him to speak. This was because the wolf-spine raging lion spear, which had enlarged, was gathering into his body. Although compared with the great amount of power he had before, it was only a trickle, but it seemed to be enough to protect his body and soul. So he smiled and said, "If you think about it, you will know that I always like to make trouble. How can I break my own arm? Just now I stalled you for so long because I was waiting for it." The golden rock shouted angrily, "I'm afraid it's useless. Can this kind of inanimate object save you? It's not a dead thing now." Li Yunxin put his palms together, and the monster in the east suddenly rushed over as fast as a shooting star. "You said that the people over there told you a lot of things. But now I think they haven't told you enough. Otherwise, you should know that the skeletons suppressed in the underground cave and the sea cave in the Midland and the ocean are the ancient gods of this world. And the spear in my hand is the phalanx of that ancient god." He sneered and said, "When I got this spear on the ocean, I felt its unyielding will and amazing obsession. In this spear, there is still some consciousness of the ancient god of the past. Now, Rock King, have a good fight with it." As soon as he finished speaking, the monster had already pounced in front of the golden rock. Without thinking, the Grand Supreme Demon King raised his palm and hit the monster's shoulder. This monster was huge, and the golden rock was like a mosquito in the air in front of it. However, the terrifying power of this palm immediately destroyed a small part of the monster's body, revealing the iron armor-like internal skeleton in its chest. In Cloud Mountain, the evil lord at the peak of the profound realm could seriously injure this monster at the cost of his own serious injury. Now the golden rock was naturally not a problem. After his attack succeeded, he immediately sneered and said, "This is your so-called ancient god?" In the time it took to say this, the seriously injured monster had already rushed in front of Li Yunxin and reached out to grab the spear. Then it fiercely stabbed the spear into its chest all the way to the root. After that, it seemed that the heavenly sphere had a heart. The whole ground made a dong sound. The monster's wound quickly healed, and its skin, which was shining with metallic light, instantly covered its whole body. It finally had a human form, and it no longer looked like an evil spirit. It had become a real giant. However, although this giant did not look scary, its aura was shocking. The spiritual chi of heaven and earth that had originally surged into the golden rock's body seemed to have encountered a bottomless pit. In an instant, all the spiritual chi changed directions and gathered crazily on the giant's body. The dim light in its eye sockets condensed into eyeballs. This pair of eyes glanced around and stared fixedly at the golden rock. The latter's expression became serious. He rose slightly and looked at the giant solemnly. Seeing Li Yunxin behind it, he smiled proudly and said, "Rock King? Why are you so impatient? This thing is a part of the ancient god in the past, not my child. Originally, it only came for the spear in my hand and would not help me or you, but you gave it a palm. This story tells us that we need to be calm in the face of trouble," he said with a cold expression. "Now we are even." As soon as he said that, the giant suddenly reached out with his hand. The golden rock did not know the real strength of this thing and immediately retreated. But the giant's palm reached out from behind him and firmly closed together. With a loud bang, two golden lights flashed in the sky. It was a gigantic illusion of golden feathers that spanned the entire sky. At this time, Li Yunxin laughed coldly. "Wonderful. Looks like I'm more suited to backstabbing people and watching you fight. You lost 3 strands of hair when you fought against the Shinryu, and now you've also lost 3 strands. Tell me, am I stronger or is the former Shinryu stronger?" There was an explosion of thunder in the sky, and the golden rock's figure passed through one of the giant's palms and flew out. But Li Yunxin was now a chatterbox. "Rock King, if you don't fight properly today, you might become a featherless chicken. If that happens and you fall into Li Chuanfeng's hands, it will be very embarrassing." The golden rock was furious. "Shut up." With some unknown method, the giant tree moved again, and like a giant worm, it tried to surround Li Yunxin again. But as soon as the giant waved his hand, the giant tree was hit, trembled a few times and then stopped moving. Li Yunxin sneered, "So you still have strength left. I'll call another person and let you have a good fight." When the giant followed the golden rock and launched the second palm strike, he raised his hand and took out the imperial heavenly painting. "This is the spiritual power painting of Midland." As he spoke, Li Yunxin quickly locked his fingers on the painting. "Now, I'll borrow the natural power and call the great sage to fight to his heart's content." The golden rock, who had encountered a powerful enemy, could no longer stop him. Li Yunxin completed the formation within the span of 3 breaths, and then reached out his hand and pointed at the eye of the formation. The weather changed and the sun and the moon dimmed. A terrifying power surged towards the painting in his hand, making the painting shake ceaselessly, as if it was going to break in the next moment. However, when it really came to the next moment, Li Yunxin seemed to be stunned. Nothing happened. The terrifying power surged into the painting but nothing happened. Chapter 852. Then he popped out his eyes and yelled, "How is this possible?" Looking at the map in his hand, it was like a beach covered by a flood. There were only some water stains, some residual power left. But most of it was sucked away by something, leaving nothing behind. That should be a powerful thing that could only be molded by the spiritual power between heaven and earth. After a breath, he roared towards the sky, "Li Chunfeng, I swear, I will destroy your body and soul." At the moment, the golden rock and the ancient god were fighting fiercely. The sky was filled with colorful lights and power. People who didn't know what was going on might think that it was the most beautiful fireworks in the world. But in fact, the power contained in a tiny spark of this fireworks was enough to destroy a large city. It was hard to tell which one was stronger. The golden rock suffered a loss first, then retreated. It seemed that it wanted to run away, but this ancient god had a strange power that could stop it every time. It seemed that in the eyes of that thing, time was the same as space, and as long as it flew high enough, it could see the whole world. Every change of the golden rock's power was within its expectation. Therefore, even though its incomplete body wasn't as strong as this rock, it wasn't at a disadvantage. But this way the battle was in a stalemate. The great rock king was able to hear Li Yunxin's angry roar. Therefore he knew that his other move had failed. He was angry at Li Yunxin for tricking him, so he sneered and said, "The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Now you've been tricked by Li Chunfeng, how do you feel? When I find the weak point of this stupid thing, I'll change my mind and not let you die a quick death." But Li Yunxin just stared at the distance with a gloomy face and didn't respond. In fact, he couldn't see anything at the moment, only a long and flat horizon. Far away from the battle, the ground was still as bright as a mirror. It was a scroll given to him by Li Chunfeng in the Great Tai Tower in Shuanghu City. He said that he had been walking in the Midland for the past year, and had drawn this map with the help of those painters. Therefore he had already imprinted all of the streams of natural powers in this area. He also said that he could activate the diagram when he was fighting the golden rock. It would gather the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to heal the great sage's injuries and kill the golden rock. But now, when Li Yunxin really used it, the spiritual energy was like water on the sand, completely seeping away. Li Chunfeng, he sighed. The mountains and forests that protected the royal family of the Wu kingdom had been destroyed during the battle between the golden rock and Li Chunfeng. But in fact there was no need for the royal family to protect anymore. With the flattened Heaven Fiend cliff as the center, the land within 900 miles became a smooth mirror. Beyond that was the plains that were slowly turning black. Only after traveling for more than 1,500 miles could one see trees, houses, and corpses that had yet to take shape, had already been carbonized and then burned. The vanguard army of the Rong state besieging the Wu state was almost completely annihilated. Even the demons with lower states died like mortals. When the Taishang fought, the people were plunged into misery and suffering and countless lives were lost. Lu Gongzan and the ninth young master supported each other as they walked on the mirror plane. Now that they had lost their supernatural powers, they were like mortals. Although their bodies were formed by the painting Dao supernatural powers of the Taishang state, and were considered unusual among mortals, they still felt a long-lost sense of fatigue and hunger after walking for 100 miles. This feeling was not unfamiliar to Lu Gongzan, but to the ninth young master, it was a very novel experience. After taking another 3 or 4 steps, the ninth young master staggered and fell to the ground. Looking back, there was an unobstructed view of the mirror and the straight horizon. Looking forward, left and right, it was still the same. This made people feel absurd, as if they were no longer in the mortal world, but in some terrifying space. Am I going to die? Lu Gongzan. The ninth young master pressed his stomach. I feel something is wrong. I might die, old Lu, I can't make it. Lu Gongzan also sat down beside him, tightened his clothes and turned back to look. Ninth young master, you're just hungry, thirsty and tired, but you won't die. In the sky behind them, there were gorgeous and magical colors, and they could vaguely see a huge human figure. However, their eyesight was not as good as before, and they could only see a blurry outline, and hear waves of muffled thunder. Hungry? The ninth young master opened his mouth. I'm not hungry. I didn't feel like this when I was hungry, old Lu, and I'm not thirsty. I didn't feel like this when I was thirsty. I used to want to eat. In the past you weren't hungry but greedy. Lu Gongzan patted his knee. Get used to it, ninth young master. You'll get used to it soon. The ninth young master was stunned for a while. Then he looked back. Li Yunxin? Did he win this time? Lu Gongzan was silent for a while with a solemn face and then said, I don't know. But I know when he sent us away just now, he was not at his wits' end. He said that after he died, I would offer him the bejeweled nectar of Cheonghua building. But he obviously liked to drink Mu Nanchun. I thought about it again and again but I couldn't figure out what else he meant. I think he was telling me that the situation at that time was not what I saw, and that he had other ways. He just told us not to do stupid things. The ninth young master rubbed his belly again, and then, alas, Lu Gongzan sighed, we left there for almost an hour. They started fighting again. If something had happened to him, it wouldn't have dragged on for so long. He must have succeeded in his plan. The ninth young master rubbed his belly and thought for a while. Then he suddenly punched the ground. I really had 8 generations of bad karma to meet him. Now I have lost all my cultivation in this body. If he really died, would I end up like those little people? Why do I have to worry about food and drink all day? No. Lu Gongzan, you have to think of a way. What else did he say to you? We have to help him save his life. Otherwise, what should I do in the future? But Lu Gongzan shook his head. There's no way, ninth young master. There's no way. He raised his hand and pointed behind him. That's the fight between the grand elders. Even if we were in the past, you were in the true realm and I was in the profound realm, we couldn't help. Brother Xn mentioned the Donghai kingdom. Maybe he has made some preparations there. If we really want to help him, we have to leave this wasteland and go to the Donghai kingdom. The ninth young master frowned. I won't go. I won't leave at this time. I have to. At this time, he heard the voice of a third person. You really shouldn't leave, said the voice. Your body is still useful. They looked toward the source of the voice and saw the third person. It was a green phantom, translucent. His feet didn't touch the ground and he floated over slowly. This thing looked like a wandering ghost. But his words were clear and logical. Obviously he had retained his sanity. They didn't know where he came from. The third person walked 2 steps away from them and stopped. He put his hands behind his back and looked up into the distance. Although he didn't have a body, he had a kind of indescribable majesty and pressure. Lu Gongzan and the ninth young master looked at each other. The latter was about to speak, but Lu Gongzan pressed his arm and stopped him. Because he realized that the appearance of this ghost was 80% similar to that of his brother Xen. You are. Lu Gongzan stood up and said in a low voice, Li Chunfeng? The ghost glanced at him. Oh, you are Lu Gongzan. Thank you for taking care of my son this year. The ninth young master stared at this person. He had only heard about this person, but this was the first time he saw him. Even though all he saw was a ghost. Lu Gongzan put on a fake smile. It's brother Xn who took care of me. Otherwise, I would still be a mediocre mortal in the city of Wei. Maybe I would have died half a year ago. The ghost laughed. I know what he wants. You are the only one who can give him what he wants. But there are many people who can give you what you want. So it's not wrong to say that you take care of him. Lu Gongzan's face turned cold. What he wants is nothing more than sincere feelings. When he knew you were not dead, I persuaded him that you were his father after all, and maybe you had your own difficulties. But I didn't expect that you didn't have the feelings that a human should have. Even a vicious tiger doesn't eat its cubs. What you did is no different from a beast. Li Chunfeng smiled and said casually, if you like it, you can be his father. You. Lu Gongzan was furious but he didn't act rashly. You? Me? What? Am I heartless? Li Chunfeng looked at him gently. Don't I know how to hug each other like you? Ha. Yes. Love is a very good thing. Family, friendship, love, and the entanglement of responsibilities and obligations between people. These things will bring you together and you won't feel lonely anymore. Li Chunfeng looked at Lu Gongzan with interest. But it will also mean that there will be responsibilities between people. Don't you know how harmful responsibility is? He raised his hand and pointed at the blazing light in the distance. My son, if he didn't have feelings for you and some responsibilities, would he be in such a situation? If he didn't have feelings for me, would he be in such a situation? Lu Gongzan opened his mouth but couldn't say anything. The ninth young master also wanted to refute. But he couldn't understand these things either. Li Chuanfeng's tone was calmer. Do you know how I live? I gave him a scroll saying that there was a map of the mountains and rivers in the Midland. I told him to gather the power of the Midland during the battle, to heal the injury of his great elder's assistant. But in fact, since I faked my death for a year, I have been traveling in the Midland. I spent a year to draw a soul for myself in the Midland. He used this method in the city of Wei. Why didn't he think about it? Because he was blinded by his feelings for me and he wasn't so smart. A few days ago he hesitated many times, maybe he thought that he had given me a lot of chances. He couldn't be decisive, and ended up in such a situation. When I saw him like that, I felt proud and sad at the same time. He was the most like me in the world. But in the end he still became an ordinary person. Li Chunfeng sighed again, therefore he used that magic formation just now to rebuild my soul. Lu Gongzan, tell me, what did you do to him? Chapter 853. Lu Gongzan was silent for a while. Then he glared at Li Chunfeng. Li Chunfeng, you killed him. Forget it. You people really can't understand these things. Li Chunfeng looked dull. The weak will only hug each other and indulge in illusions. They will never have the courage to think about how to deal with love. And the strong must be lonely. His eyes moved between Lu Gongzan and the ninth young master. Since you took care of him for me, I'll spare your life. The ninth young master was still in a daze, thinking about what to say to refute the wandering soul in front of him. But when Lu Gongzan heard what he said, he realized what was going to happen. He pulled the ninth young master behind him. Li Chunfeng, but the spirit passed through his body silently and went straight into the ninth young master's body. Then the ninth young master rolled his eyes. He quickly took a step back, turned around and walked toward the place where the Taishang battle was in the distance. Lu Gongzan was stunned for a while and touched his body subconsciously. He wasn't checking if he was hurt, but he knew the dragon soul was not destroyed. The ninth young master's body should have been taken by Li Chunfeng, and he should have come to his body. But he didn't. After another 3 breaths, Lu Gongzan shouted angrily, "Where's his dragon soul?" As soon as he said that, he pounced forward and used the grappling technique he learned a long time ago to grab Li Chuanfeng's throat. However, Li Chunfeng only dodged to the side and he missed. Then he felt a strong force coming from behind. His leg was tripped and he fell to the ground. Li Chunfeng didn't bother him and kept moving forward. Lu Gongzan immediately got up and tried to grab his ankle. But Li Chunfeng seemed to have eyes on the back of his head and stomped on his hand. With a crack, 2 of his fingers were broken. Cold sweat broke out. Lu Gongzan grunted and grabbed with his other hand. "Where's his soul?" Li Chunfeng dodged the attack and turned around. He kicked him in the ear, bent down, grabbed him by the neck and lifted him up. "You see," he said quietly, "that's why love hurts. Your mind is in a mess and your movements are full of openings. Yet you overestimate yourself and try to stop me. But now, even with this body of mine, I can still easily kill you without spiritual power or divine abilities. You are courting death because of love." However, Lu Gongzan glared at him. "You broke him up?" Li Chunfeng laughed. "Of course not. He was still in this body. As long as he's in my body, Li Yunxin will be afraid. He's very useful." "Why not me?" "Because you and that son of mine have too much chemistry." Li Chunfeng tossed him aside. "I'm not sure if you two have any other plans. It's better to be safe. Last chance, get out of here. I'm sparing your life because you're still useful. Don't seek death." He turned around and continued walking. Lu Gongzan's arms fell and he didn't chase. He gritted his teeth and stared at Li Chunfeng for a full 15 minutes. Only when his figure became a small black dot did he fall to the ground. His tongue touched the roof of his mouth, producing nectar. He closed his eyes and guarded the golden palace in the sea of qi. He made a seal with his hands and protected his abdomen. He inhaled and guided the spiritual power of heaven and earth into his body, passing through the Magpie Bridge, the middle Dantian, and the Sea of Qi. He exhaled, passing through the Gate of Life and the Jade Mirror Bai Hui to quench the turbid qi in his body. He was like a beginner in cultivation beginning his first breathing adjustment with this new body. He knew he was a genius in cultivation. He realized this after meeting Li Yunxin. Moreover, his body was created so it was even more gifted. His spirit still had many experiences and insights from his previous cultivation. Therefore he was trying to reach the emptiness realm in the shortest time possible. Thus it took him a quarter of an hour. After breathing 5 times, the spiritual power in his body became pure. The spiritual power formed a snow mountain in the Sea of Qi in his lower Dantian and quickly opened up the 8 extraordinary meridians. Then, he changed the breathing method from the small circulation to the big circulation. Soon, the meridians in his body were cleared and the divine spirit was formed in several major acupoints. With the divine spirit guarding the acupoints, the speed of body refinement became faster. His sea of qi became pure and clear, and the snow mountain shone brightly. He reached the emptiness realm. Lu Gongzan immediately opened his eyes. The finger that was broken by Li Chunfeng was no longer in pain. He bit his right index finger and drew on the ground with his blood. After 2 breaths, he bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood. Rise. A small crimson bird appeared out of thin air and flew into the air. Lu Gongzan immediately said to the bird, Li Chunfeng was revived by the scroll he gave you. He took the 9th young master's body and is on his way to you. His spirit seems to be intact. Maybe he is still a Taishang spirit. With that, the bird spread its wings and flew into the distance. Lu Gongzan sat on the ground and spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. An unstable state was a taboo in cultivation. He used a quarter of an hour to advance 2 levels and immediately used his blood to cast the spell. This almost hurt his natal spirit. The crimson bird flew across the sky of the plane of mirror. After a quarter of an hour, it flew past a small black dot. When the red bird disappeared from his sight, Li Chunfeng smiled and said in a low voice, Well done, Lu Gongzan. He had been walking on the plane of mirror for almost half an hour. At first, he walked like an ordinary person, but his footsteps were slightly faster. However, as he walked, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered on his body. Gradually, one could see that his body became whiter and smoother, and his lines became smoother. His footsteps became firmer and stronger, and the wind blew under his feet. After another quarter of an hour, his body began to emit a dense glow. When a cultivator was about to reach the transcendent state, he would completely refine his body. The purpose of this process was to remove the impurities in his body and fill it with the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. After reaching the transcendent state, a cultivator would be able to fly in the air and soar between heaven and earth. The things that were refined out of his body were referred to as the glow in the ancient books. Cultivators usually thought that the word glow was a generic word for flaw. However, if someone were to see Li Chunfeng now, they would understand the meaning of the word. The process that would take a normal cultivator years or even decades was shortened to a second. The things that were refined out of his body and could not be seen were now showing their original colors. When the clouds dispersed, Li Chunfeng stopped in his tracks and dug out a sharp stone from the ground. He tossed the stone to the side and leaped onto it. The battle between the golden rock and the giant was coming to an end. After getting used to the giant's initial attack, one would realize its biggest flaw: it was not smart. The giant was not the complete form of the ancient god. Although it was stronger and smarter than the 2 skeletons at the foot of the cloud mountain, its intelligence was still limited. It was like a madman who had fallen into a paranoid state. When it was hard to tell who was going to win, it would repeat the same sentence. With an angry tone he said, "You lied to me." Neither Li Yunxin nor the golden rock knew what it meant. An hour later, the golden light on the golden rock's body dimmed. A huge amount of spirit qi had flowed into Li Yunxin's painting, and the spirit qi in the world had become extremely thin. Considering the amount of spirit qi needed by a grand supreme overlord, the world was almost empty for the golden rock. He could no longer heal his wounds with spirit qi during the battle, so he was in the same situation as Li Yunxin. However, the giant's injuries were more serious. It had lost an arm and half of its head, and there was a huge hole in its body. It could no longer use its divine power and tried to fight the golden rock. Even so, it was no match for the Grand Supreme Rock King, who was more agile. The outcome seemed to have been decided, but the golden rock was not happy at all. What he was most worried about had happened. He was about to defeat Li Yunxin, but he had to pay a huge price. Therefore, when he was angry, he did not notice a blood-red bird crossing the battlefield, luckily avoiding all the dangers that could have broken it up, and finally landed on Li Yunxin's shoulder. The bird seemed to be exhausted and it looked dispirited. The blood on its body gradually faded, and it gradually became translucent. Li Yunxin frowned, caught it, and crushed it without hesitation. The bird turned into a stream of light and dispersed, but the words that Lu Gongzan said also dissipated with the light. He was silent for a moment and then smiled. As expected. He raised his voice and said, "Rock King, I have bad news and good news. Which one do you want to hear?" The golden rock ignored him. In the past hour, Li Yunxin's mouth had not been idle. This made the Rock King gnash his teeth in anger, and he regretted not killing him in one shot. Now that he heard what Li Yunxin said, He thought that Li Yunxin was trying to make him impatient again so that he could create an opportunity for the giant. However, Li Yunxin had already said, "The bad news is that Li Chunfeng is indeed not dead and he is coming here. The good news is that since this is the case, we can temporarily bury the hatchet and kill this liar first. He has a realm but no cultivation, so he is much easier to deal with than me." The golden rock still did not say anything. He found an opportunity to condense his demonic power and launch a fierce attack, hitting the giant's head. With a loud bang, the giant took 3 steps back, and used his remaining hand to grab the huge parasol tree in midair to prevent himself from falling to the ground. However, his entire head had been smashed and he looked like Xing Tian. However, he was not dead, and a terrifying roar came from his chest, as well as the words that had been repeated several times. The next moment, countless things that looked like snakes crawled out of the wound, as if they wanted to create a new head. The Grand Supreme Golden Rock did not chase after him. The fierce attack just now had caused his spirit chi to dissipate, and he could only adjust his breathing in the air. At this moment he had the leisure to sneer. "Li Yunxin, I don't believe a single word you say now." However, Li Yunxin, who was trapped on the huge tree, smiled and raised his hand to point into the distance. "Rock King, if you don't believe me you can take a look for yourself, see who is behind you." The Golden Rock sneered again. This kind of trick. However, he heard a voice. What he said is true. The owner of the voice broke through the air and stopped 1,000 feet away from the Golden Rock. "Rock King, you are now surrounded by enemies." Chapter 854. The Golden Rock was slightly stunned. Then he retracted his anger and the chi dynamic around him. He used a few restrictive spells to protect himself before he turned around and looked behind him. Li Chunfeng had a different appearance, but the chi dynamic around him was the real deal. He stood on a translucent rock in the air. "You did well." Li Chunfeng nodded at Li Yunxin from afar. "My spirit is intact and I resurrected perfectly. Lu Gongzan is fine too. You should be out soon. I'll undo the seal for you. We'll kill him together and the world will be at peace." Before the two could speak, Li Chunfeng waved his hand. The giant would suddenly spasmed like a dying worm. The wound that sealed Li Yunxin closed up quickly. In the blink of an eye, Li Yunxin was squeezed out. He was free. The Golden Rock frowned and said coldly, "Fine. The two of you are indeed in cahoots." However, Li Yunxin laughed coldly. "Don't talk nonsense, Rock King. Don't you know what's going on?" The 3 Grand Elders ran together, each with their own ulterior motives. "Li Chunfeng hoped that you and I would fight until both of us were injured, and I hoped that you and him would fight until both of us were injured. I'm guessing you have the same idea. This person." He pointed at Li Chunfeng. "He faked his death and left you to fight with me. Now that he saw that you were about to defeat me, he came to help me. However, if I had the upper hand just now, you would be the one he helped." Li Chunfeng smiled faintly. "Even so. But now this Rock King should know who he should deal with. My place of the outer fringe is insignificant, and I can take care of it any time. You, on the other hand, are hard to deal with now that you've escaped." He looked at the Golden Rock and his smile grew wider. "Why don't you kill me first and then deal with my son?" The conversation between the two made the Golden Rock frown even tighter. For a moment he could not figure out what the two of them were planning to do. However, he heard Li Yunxin laugh coldly again. "Are you confused, Rock King? Let me tell you. This Li Chunfeng faked his death first and exhausted both of us. Then he used the plan he left behind to resurrect himself, and at the same time he tricked me again. The reason why he dared to appear here with his transcendent state cultivation was because he thought that I would not let him die in my current situation. I should have given him great power and made him a new threat to fight against you. This way I can give myself a chance to breathe. It can be considered an overt plot." Li Yunxin sighed. "But now, even if I don't want to follow his wishes, what can I do? I don't have much power of the netherworld left in me, but the spiritual energy needed to make the great sage reconstruct his divine soul. This stupid thing beside you is useless and not a match for you. If I don't give it to him, I'm afraid I'll die soon." After saying this, he looked at Li Chunfeng. "As you wish." However, the moment Li Yunxin received Lu Gongzan's messenger bird, a spell that had long been engraved in someone's mind was awakened. More than 7,460 li away. Rong City. The spirit officer, Wang, was watching a few of his disciples finish the last stroke on the talisman in the Star Palace. The Star Palace used to be a place to observe the stars and predict the future. But in the current dynasty, the emperor had placed all the talented people in the Star Palace. Those who were more capable were appointed as spirit officers. Those who were slightly less powerful were appointed as star officers. And then there were the apprentices who were appointed as academic officers. The current dynasty's religion was the dragon cult. Therefore, most of the spirit officers were cultivators who cultivated the art of painting, and some were immortals of the dragon cult. The Star Palace used to be a dispensable institution, but now, it had become one of the most important departments. There had never been a dynasty on Midland that had a territory as vast as the Rome Kingdom. The territory was vast, and the transportation had to be convenient to ensure effective rule. But after the war in Midland, most of the roads and pipelines had been destroyed. Therefore, the Star Palace took on the responsibility. The spirit officers, star officers and academic officers in the palace spent most of their time inscribing talismans. With these talismans, the emperor's edicts could be quickly transmitted to the officials and generals, and there was no need to worry about the government's orders being blocked. Wang was originally a star officer. But not long ago, after he entered the palace to meet the emperor, he was appointed as a spirit officer. The emperor gave him an important task: to build temples for the Holy Father of the Dragon cult in every part of the Rome Kingdom. But even now, Wang still felt that the experience of that night was like a dream. This wasn't an abstract, emotional description, but a physical feeling. He couldn't remember many things that happened that night. The only thing he could clearly remember was the appearance of the Dragon cult's Holy Father and his unfathomable, mountain-like aura. He also remembered that the Holy Father seemed to have touched him. Since then, a voice had appeared in his head. This voice had appeared when he was cultivating. It had pointed out the right path and cleared the way for him, allowing his cultivation to advance by leaps and bounds in just a month. He thought, "I've obtained an immortal fate. It's the fortune of 10 lifetimes that the Holy Father taught me personally." But today in the afternoon, just as he saw the disciple beside him finish the last imperfect stroke, he frowned and was about to give him some pointers, but the voice in his head appeared again. Wang was slightly stunned. He stood where he was for about 2 breaths. The disciple nervously put down his brush and was about to be reprimanded, but he found that the teacher beside him didn't say anything. He gathered his courage and looked up, and found that Wang's face had an instant of confusion. The next moment he suddenly said, "Use talismans to pass on my orders." His voice became authoritative, no longer as gentle as before. His aura also became different, making it hard for people to have any doubts. And when he said "use talismans," he was referring to the 1,000-mile sound-transmitting talisman. This kind of thing, unless there was an imperial edict or a red approval from the cabinet, ordinary people definitely couldn't use it. But after hearing his words, the people in the hall seemed to be in a nightmare. They were clearly conscious, but they only felt that Wang's words should be carried out without any objections. About 2 breaths later, the scholars, celestial officials, and even spirit officials in the hall woke up as if they were sleepwalking, and went to the secret treasure pavilion to take out all the remaining 1,000-mile sound-transmitting talismans. There were still 216 of these dark purple talismans. But just a month ago, there were less than 50 sound-transmitting talismans in the celestial division. After meeting the Dragon cult master that night, Wang suddenly felt that there were too few sound-transmitting talismans in the hall, so he ordered people to make more. But 5 or 6 days ago he felt that there should be enough talismans, so he stopped work. Now, he suddenly realized why he was satisfied with the number 216. Because this month, the Dragon cult master's Holy Father shrines were built at lightning speed all over the Rome nation. These precious talismans were used up in an instant. So the newly appointed spirit officials in the Holy Father shrines all over the Rome nation received instructions almost at the same time, to add a stroke on the portrait of Li Chunfeng, which was personally drawn by the Dragon cult master that night, using a special method and a special technique. And so the eye of the formation was formed. Chapter 855. The terrifying power of faith surged into Li Chunfeng's body in an instant. Such power was more than 10 times stronger than the power of faith that helped Emperor Li reach the peak of the profound realm. As soon as Li Yunxin finished speaking, Li Chunfeng's body suddenly shone with a dark light, emitting a terrifying aura. "When I arrived at the city of Wei, my ocean of qi and mountain of snow was sealed," Li Yunxin said calmly, "so I wanted to find a way to break the seal. But you never told me that I can't use the power of faith in a human body, so I did it." In the end, he almost died from losing his cultivation. But I also know that with the power of faith in a human body, I can still hold on for a while. I think this time should be enough for you to kill the Rock King. Or you want to fight me, but I promise I will be harder to kill than the Rock King." Li Chunfeng looked up to the sky and took a deep breath, as if he was experiencing the surging power of the Taishang in his body. Then he smiled, "How can I bear to kill you? But the fact that there are two me in this world is very unpleasant. I have long wanted to clean up the roots. Rock King, it's time for us to put an end to this." The Rock King frowned and was about to escape. No matter what method Li Yunxin used to make Li Chunfeng return to the Taishang, this person was the strongest among the three. Since he was not confident of winning, he did not want to be entangled here. It was not like the three of them were trapped in the iron cage and had to fight like cornered beasts. There was no need for him to sacrifice himself so that either one of them could benefit. So he flew straight up into the sky and shouted angrily, "Clean up the roots. You are something I created, how dare you talk about the roots?" But Li Chunfeng didn't chase after him. He only looked up and smiled. "In our previous world, the strong are respected. Isn't it the same in this world? You have reincarnated into a demon body. Your mind is naturally not as sharp as a human's. You only have great power. What have you done in these thousands of years? You're just a great beast king in this midland, and you've completely forgotten the mission and responsibility that we came here for. Even now, what are you still thinking about, you idiot? Because of what happened to Li Yunxin? Grievance? You have to act like a dog, wagging your tail to prove to the people over there that you're useful? Ah." Li Chunfeng laughed coldly. "You're no longer worthy of mentioning origin to me. Leaving you until today to kill you can be considered as me being extremely benevolent." At this point he shouted, "Lightning!" The world suddenly lit up. The dazzling white light that was emitted from the cloudy mountain appeared again. This time the light came even faster. It hit the Rock King almost as soon as Li Chunfeng shouted that word. At this moment the golden rock turned into a small sun. Even someone as strong as Li Yunxin slightly narrowed his eyes. The supreme golden rock finally let out a cry of pain, and its body fell like a stone. Li Chunfeng charged forward and unleashed an attack with the will of hundreds of millions of people. The golden rock still had a clear mind. When it was falling, it had set up a restrictive spell to withstand this fierce attack. However, before it could completely dissolve it, its body was blasted high up into the sky. It was hit by the second attack from an unknown cloudy mountain. For a moment, rays of light shone brightly and spiritual chi overflowed. It was a sign that his snow mountain, sea of chi and meridians were seriously injured. At least for a moment he could not control the demonic power in his body and almost collapsed. This Lord Rock fought head-on with 3 grand exalts in one day. Could be said that he was very powerful. However, the 3 grand exalts he faced, actually there were only 2 of them, were not decent people. He had been ambushed one after another, and his strength had been greatly reduced. Moreover, Cloudy Mountain was helping him high up in the sky so he could not escape even if he wanted to. In just a dozen breaths he was at a disadvantage. He could not hurt Li Chunfeng, but Li Chunfeng fought with his life on the line. It was as if he knew that the power of will in his body could not last long, so he only wanted to kill the Supreme Golden Rock King. The 2 of them fought brilliantly, but Li Yunxin did not move at all. He did not help Li Chunfeng kill the Golden Rock King, nor did he help the Golden Rock King kill Li Chunfeng. Instead, he stood in midair and narrowed his eyes to look higher. Cloudy Mountain had already shot 5 beams of light, each of which was terrifyingly powerful. He had been to Cloudy Mountain and tried to fake his death to use the dragon soul to revive and sneak inside. Thus, he had a real understanding of the strength of the defenses outside Cloudy Mountain. The restrictions outside Cloudy Mountain were very strong. However, from what Li Yunxin could see, they could probably only stop Grand Exalts from breaking in. The power that Cloudy Mountain shot out should have consumed a lot of its internal energy reserves. It was not an offensive weapon, but more of a defensive one. It should be because he had given Xiaosheng to Li Chunfeng to make some modifications that it had its current power. However, that Xiaosheng was not a god. It was impossible for him to change such a huge thing with his own strength. Cloudy Mountain had been hiding its tracks from beginning to end, so there should be some problems with its defense. That was why it could not show itself and could only wait to attack from a higher place. Otherwise, such a thing hanging high in the sky would be a great deterrent. He heaved a sigh of relief. He stood still in this area where spiritual energy rampaged freely and looked at the sun in the sky. Almost a day had passed since the battle began. Although the sun was slowly setting in the west, it was still high up in the sky. However, he had already been to the sun and knew what that thing really looked like. It was just an artificial thing. He felt a sense of unreality in his heart. When he came back to his senses, he heard a loud rumble. The 7th beam of light from Cloudy Mountain hit the Rock King. This time the beam was slightly dim as if it was a little lacking in energy. However, the golden rock was already an arrow at the end of its flight. After suffering this attack and Li Chuanfeng's attack, he was finally blasted to the ground. At this moment, the Grand Rock King, who had a premonition that the end was near, finally put down his pride and shouted at the top of his lungs, "Li Yunxin! If I die, you'll be next." Li Chunfeng chased after him and smashed his head into the ground with a palm. For a Grand Elder to be struck by such a mediocre attack, it was unlikely that he would be able to survive. Then he stood next to the golden rock and looked at Li Yunxin. He has a point. I won't kill you, but you won't have it easy either. Cloudy Mountain, think about it. What should you do? Li Yunxin also slowly landed on the ground. However, when he landed, he waved his left hand. The giant behind him immediately took a step forward to the left and faced the centipede-like parasol tree in the sky. The two of them tangled together and let out a terrifying roar. However, he and Li Chunfeng were not surprised by this sudden attack, as if they had expected this move from the golden rock. Li Chunfeng laughed and lowered his head to look at the defeated opponent at his feet. So look at you. Your brain is no match for my son's. Do you think that he will be forced to help you if you seriously injure him? That's not how checks and balances work. I can kill you or him with my new power, but I chose you. Because my smart son and I both know that he has something I want. We also know that there is a possibility of negotiation between us smart people. But with an idiot like you. Li Chunfeng shook his head and slammed his palm into the golden rock's body. Impossible. The entire sky suddenly turned pale gold. Countless golden feathers fell like snowflakes. Li Chunfeng pulled his hand out of the golden rock's body and stood up. The light from the corpse flowed into his body through his orifices. Li Yunxin heaved a sigh of relief. Logically speaking, you should have died a quarter of an hour ago. Li Chunfeng smiled. That's because the painting I gave you wasn't my spirit. It was the soul of a ghost cultivator. Your power of will is a great tonic for me. Cloudy Mountain, I've predicted every step you've taken. The golden rock died. The huge wudong tree suddenly froze and stopped moving. The giant that was originally entangled with it was wrapped up and couldn't break free. But the next moment, the parasol tree turned into a black light and enveloped the giant. Then, the black light faded like faded ink, and the giant faded as well, as if it had hidden into a distant and unknown space. The world became empty and silent. The sky was dark as if it had been dyed red by someone's blood. On the flat and vast land, Li Yunxin sighed. I don't understand, Li Chunfeng. Why can't you let me go? Li Chunfeng put his hands behind his back and tilted his head slightly. He stared blankly at the sky where the giant tree and the giant had disappeared for a while, then turned his head and said, because of responsibility. Chapter 856. Responsibility? Li Chunfeng smiled. There seemed to be some sadness in his smile. Yunxin, don't you want to go back to your previous world? I guess you do. Living in such a backward, ignorant and barbaric world is a terrible torture for people like you and me. Even if there are some novel things such as human emotions, they can't make people like this world. Li Chunfeng sighed softly. So I want to leave. That's why I cooperated with those people. But on the other hand, I still have my responsibility. And that's why I can't let you go. Li Yunxin looked at him. You said your responsibility is to save the world. That's only a small part. Li Chunfeng casually condensed an ordinary-looking thin sword out of thin air and gently stroked the blade. I can't say for sure until I succeed. Li Yunxin stared at the sword in his hand and thought for a while. I understand, he said. At least I know what you're going to do next. You won't kill me, but you'll use my soul. You'll cover my soul with your consciousness and emotions. That way the tunnel will still exist, but I'll become you, and you can go to my world. What Qin Zhao said that day. I completely understand now. But since Qin Zhao hinted to me, it means that they've already noticed your intentions. You won't succeed. Li Chunfeng twirled the sword and smiled. Them? They're just a bunch of mediocre people. Qin Zhao hinted to you because he doesn't like me. But the position of the others has nothing to do with likes or dislikes. It's only because of benefits. Among the people over there, only Shenmu has a long-term view. But it's not long-term enough. They will stay out of this between the two of us because I have something he wants. How the chaotic world corrodes your original world, what happens when the two merge, what phenomena, what new laws, these are all things he wants. He only pursues the so-called truth. He wants to understand the secrets of this world, saying that he can completely save everyone. But in the end, he's just doing it for his own curiosity. Saving the world was something he did in passing. That's why he doesn't care who's right and who's wrong. As long as he satisfies himself, he'll be satisfied. That's why it's just you and me today. Li Chunfeng took a step forward and pointed his rapier at Li Yunxin. I taught you 13 styles of swordsmanship and you practiced them well. Now, let's save some energy and use these 13 paths of swords to decide the victor. Li Yunxin smiled. Determine the winner? Was there any meaning to it? So what if my swordplay is better than yours? Do you think you can hide all your abilities and let me slaughter you? The sword in Li Chunfeng's hand didn't tremble in the slightest. It was as steady as iron. If you win, I'll keep some of your senses. You are in the cage of my body. When the time is right, perhaps I can come out for some fresh air. Li Yunxin sneered, I don't want this kind of freedom. However, he looked around and waved his hand again. A piece of gravel flew over and condensed into the shape of a long sword in his hand. It's good that I can beat you a little. As soon as he finished speaking, he attacked. However, he didn't just use moves like Li Chunfeng said. The remaining netherworld energy in his body was attached to the sword, which made it extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it reached Li Chunfeng's face. However, the tip of the sword disappeared in the next moment and reappeared behind him, stabbing him in the middle of his back. Li Chunfeng smiled and blocked the attack with a swing of his sword. You're not playing by the rules. When have you ever played by the rules? Li Yunxin spat out and attacked a second time. The 13 paths of swords he learned before wasn't very advanced. In terms of technique, it was only a second-rate technique in the secular world. However, when it was used by people like them, it didn't matter if the technique was exquisite or not. The user of the sword had demonic energy in his body. Different speed and strength would result in different effects. The original feint became a real move, and the original real move became a killing move. Just like that, the original killer move had become a type of divine ability. The second sword transformed into countless lights and shadows, like a torrential rain. Only one real move was used by the secular world, but when Li Yunxin used it, every shadow could hurt. He said coldly from behind the light, You said something wrong earlier. Li Chunfeng easily blocked the attack again. What? I don't hate this world at all. At least not now. Li Yunxin stabbed with his sword and said in a low voice, It's because of those things that you don't care about, those emotions, that I find this world interesting. You say that these things are burdens, but they're what kept me going until now. Li Chunfeng, do you understand? Li Chunfeng defused a few more of his attacks and finally started to attack him. What do you understand? He asked. I understand that I won't let you get what you want. Li Yunxin blocked his sword and pushed it away. Therefore he leaned closer to Li Chunfeng, stared him in the eyes and said fiercely, You want to go to my world? You won't live long there. It's an efficient and mature society. You won't be able to do anything. Li Chunfeng exerted force and pushed him away. He didn't attack again but dropped his thin sword. Your technique hasn't improved much. Your demonic energy is about to run out. Yunexan, you've disappointed me again. He sighed. I thought you had some tricks up your sleeve. But now it seems that you're at your wit's end. Even though you've performed better than usual, I'm not satisfied yet. Li Yunxin took 2 steps back and said coldly, Oh. It turns out that your so-called swordsmanship is just to test whether I'm really in the same situation as I am now. I'm not surprised at all. But you're also seriously injured. Your realm is still there, but your strength is only at the peak of the profound realm. If you kill me, there will be a large group of demons outside. Bai Yunxin won't let you go, nor will my friends in Wei City. Have you ever thought about that? It's not a big deal. Li Chunfeng took a deep breath and his body slowly expanded. The power of faith and wish was still gathering in his body, slowly healing the injuries caused by the fight with the golden rock. He took a deep breath and his body slowly grew bigger. But he didn't grow according to the proportion of his body. Instead, he looked more like a soft monster. His face became distorted, like a character in the painting The Scream, in Li Yunxin's previous world. His body also lost its shape, becoming bloated and ugly. He gradually got rid of his human form and showed some original things. It was as if something from his previous world appeared under the rules of this world, and became like this. It's time, Yunexan. The monster said with a voice like the wind, From now on, you are me and I am you. I'll set you free, you don't have to worry about those meaningless things anymore. Chapter 857. As a result, a few strange things appeared around the ever-changing body. Above its head was an absolute circle. The thing glowed with a pale purple light as if it did not exist in this world. Above the circle was a straight line of red light that pierced the sky. From afar, it seemed to be a string that was pulling Li Chuanfeng's body. On the right side of his body was a blue stone that floated in midair. The blue stone was wrapped in a layer of water vapor that rose in spirals. On the left side was a messy, tangled mass of golden threads that had no pattern. It was a dead object, but it was also floating in midair. Behind him was a square screen of light. It was white and extremely pure. However, this light screen did not emit any light to its surroundings, as if it was also independent of this world. Li Yunxin stared at it and these things for a while. This ghostly appearance is your original appearance? It's my original name, said the voice that sounded like the wind. The voice that sounded like the howling of the wind said, based on the laws and objects of this world, it is like this. The strange figure raised its hand, again and pointed to the distance behind Li Yunxin. That is also a part of my name. Li Yunxin did not look back, but he could use his divine sense to detect what was there. A small sapling. On the empty ground where the giant parasol tree and the giant disappeared, a small sapling appeared. It had 3 branches and each branch had a leaf. However, it was not an ordinary tree, it had the aura of the giant parasol tree from before. The laws of your world, my world, and the world here may be different, but they still follow some more basic laws. I think it should be the underlying laws of the entire universe. Li Chunfeng stared at the small tree with his distorted and hollow eyes and said, for example, the so-called life. The forms are all different, but the essence is similar. From order to disorder, from low energy to high energy. And this tree is the passage. Li Yunxin, you can become a Grand Supreme because there is a passage connecting 2 worlds in your body. And this tree is the passage connecting this world and the world I came from. This kind of thing cannot be destroyed. Once the channel was opened, the fusion could not be reversed. Therefore, the astral consciousness of this world in the past, Gaia in the past, and the netherworld Earth Mother today cannot be destroyed. There was a breeze on the flat ground. Li Yunxin didn't know if it was Li Chunfeng who sighed. Everything you're doing is a futile struggle. The fate of the entire world, the fate of all intelligent creatures, was destruction. It was just that everyone wanted to escape to somewhere else before they were destroyed, struggling at death's door. But because of this, Li Chunfeng paused. It was as if he wanted the other party to hear more clearly and think more thoroughly. It will spread the destruction elsewhere. In the past, the people on the other side, told you that you would have to pay a huge price to save this world. What do you think the price is? Is it your own gain and loss? Is it because you'll lose your power, your realm, and your memories? A smile appeared on Li Chuanfeng's twisted face. None of them. Why did I waste so much effort to make you fall in love with this world? Why should you think that there is someone in this world that you cherish? Because these were the suggestions I made to the people on the other side. Because the real price you have to pay is to accelerate the destruction of your previous world. You will sacrifice the world you came from so that the people here can live on. Li Yunxin was startled. Sacrifice? He frowned. What do you mean? The passage between your world and this place has already been formed. The erosion of the laws of chaos has also begun in your world. Many of the fictitious myths and gods of your former world may slowly and truly come into existence, just like how this world used to be. But this process is extremely long, so long that it's unnecessary to consider the survival of an individual life or even a civilization. But once you go back, this process will be greatly affected. Some of the marks of chaos will be brought back to your previous world because of you, causing the erosion to become faster and more violent. The history of your previous world may be rewritten. You already know that the erosion occurs on the plane of time and space at the same time, so the people and things that you know and used to live in your previous world may no longer exist. Think about it. The first time you go back, you find that the world is still the same as in your memory. Then, as time passes, maybe decades, centuries, the history of that world will slowly change. Your own memories, your present reality will also be rewritten. But you won't be aware of this change. Because you are a part of that world. You may regret it, but it's more likely that you won't even be aware of why you regret it. These things are the price you have to pay for saving this place. Your previous world may originally need billions of years to be destroyed and return to chaos. But because of you, this process may be shortened to hundreds of millions of years, or even tens of millions of years. Li Yunxin was silent. After a while, he said, "So you know that I have nothing to miss in my previous world, so I have it in this world. Then I will sacrifice the other world for the people and things here." Yes. Li Yunxin looked up at the setting sun on the horizon and closed his eyes. He stood between heaven and earth for a while, pursing his lips. Is Lu Gongzan someone you arranged? Li Chunfeng laughed. His laughter was like the northern wind passing through the gaps in the winter night, cold and piercingly cold. Ah, do you suspect him now? I really want to, but unfortunately he isn't. But his feelings for you have made this boring world a little more interesting. At least I know that there are some romantic feelings in this world. The person I arranged is Bai Yunxin. She didn't know. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be that successful now. But that doesn't matter. As long as creatures like you are alive, you will definitely cling to something like vines. For example, emotions, power, wealth. Throw you into this world and you will find something you want to miss. This is your weakness. Li Yunxin opened his eyes, not paying attention to his mockery. After a breath's time he asked, so now that things have come to this, what is the method you provided them to save this world? Painting Dao. Li Chunfeng said without reservation. Painting Dao cultivators in the Taishang realm paint the mountains, rivers, earthly qi, and the spirits of all living things in this world into a painting. And now that the painting is in your hands, the earthly qi has been collected. As long as you paint the spirits of all living things in this world, it will become a small world. And then trigger the complete destruction of this world. This place will fuse with the chaotic world outside. At the moment of destruction, unimaginable energy will be generated, enough to reverse time travel, and bring the world in this painting back to your side. Li Yunxin thought for a while. Then those who go back are not the real people here. They are just projections. The real people are already dead. Li Chunfeng smiled strangely. Is there a difference? You have already died once in the city of Wei. After that, you will only be a copy of yourself, a projection. But now, don't you think you are yourself? In the end, the soul is just a shock wave at the level of the big universe. Replicating the shock wave, there is no real or fake. They are the same thing. Li Yunxin was silent for a while. You have a point. That does seem to be the case. At this moment he looked a little lonely and disheartened. This made him almost emotionless when he spoke, as if he was a walking corpse, only to satisfy his last bit of curiosity, to solve the last few mysteries, and it was hard for him to miss anything. But the earthly qi of the mountains is already very difficult to draw. The spiritual qi in the human body is even more difficult to draw, he said in a low voice. How can this be done? With that sage around, it is not difficult. Li Chunfeng's tone was slightly mocking. He is about to die. Do you know? But in fact, he is seeking death. That person called Li Zhen spread out his consciousness and half-fused with the Netherworld Mother. That is why he can control it. In the end, it is a battle of wills. That is why I said that things like emotions will only make people weak, and only responsibility will make people strong. If he is a person dominated by emotions, perhaps he would not have been able to hold on long ago. But because of responsibility he has held on until now. All the living beings on this heavenly sphere, in the end, come from the Netherworld Mother. It is one. One is two, that is the ancient God. Then two gives birth to three, and three gives birth to all things. The difference in spiritual power between all the individuals in the world can be traced back to the Netherworld Mother. With this, the people over there call it the database, things will be much easier. In fact, they have been preparing for this for many years. Otherwise, what do you think they are busy with over there? The main purpose of the soul reincarnating, going to the netherworld to experience, and then being released is to collect as many samples as possible and gather the big data. So, you can rest assured about this matter. Li Yunxin sighed softly. Then he is indeed a sage. As for this world, the reason why it changed so quickly is also because you came here, right? Just like what would have happened if I had returned to my previous world. After saying this, he looked up at the deformed Li Chunfeng. One last thing, you once said that your previous world was destroyed. You came here to warn and save it. But now I guess what you said is not the truth. He turned around and looked at the small tree in the distance. You want to use my spirit to return to my previous world. Why? When we merge into one, you will naturally know. Li Chunfeng's expression suddenly changed. His strange body, the circle behind it, the line, the boulder, the golden thread, and the light screen all turned deep black. In the next moment, space turned upside down and the light disappeared. The whole world was shrouded in darkness. Chapter 858. Suddenly, Li Yunxin saw a spot of white light in the endless darkness that even his spiritual awareness could not penetrate. The spot of white light quickly expanded and turned into a square door. It was as if outside the door was a blazing world of endless light, and inside the door was an eternal abyss of darkness. The light spilled in from the door and stretched into a light curtain on the ground. Li Yunxin stared at the door and the light and suddenly felt that his mind was a little slow. But he quickly got used to this feeling and did not notice anything unusual. He even began to feel that this world had been like this since the beginning of chaos, and nothing had changed. It was as if the person in the dream did not feel that there was anything wrong with the strange and fantastic environment around him. Only in the bottom of his heart, there was still a voice telling him to wake up quickly, but that voice was soon covered by the darkness and became a meaningless background noise in his mind. His consciousness became even more chaotic. His reason and clear consciousness were wrapped in darkness and fell into the abyss of the sea of his heart. This is... He muttered to himself, where is this? Then he saw a person appear in the door and walk slowly towards him. That person walked stiffly and her figure flickered. She looked like someone in the old black and white movies from his world. You are... He muttered again. The voice in the bottom of his heart called out again, and a thought flashed through his consciousness because of this voice. He thought that he was fighting with Li Chunfeng, or should be fighting with Li Chunfeng. He had to wake up, or else he might. But when he saw the face of the person walking towards him, the voice in the bottom of his heart disappeared again. She was Shirkuizi. She was Lu Gongzhan's confidant in the city of Wei. She used to live in a small temple on Nanshan Hill and later died. An ordinary person like her had nothing to write home about in her life. Perhaps the most dangerous thing in her life was taking in Lu Gongzhan. But compared to what Li Yunxin had experienced and what the people around him had experienced, it was really insignificant. All the memories about this person were piled up in the dark corner of his consciousness, and were almost covered with dust. But now that he saw this woman, those memories resurfaced. Shirkuizi's face was covered in blood and her body had been cut open. His internal organs were exposed and they were all bright red. The bright red color was especially eye-catching in this black and white space. Li Yunxin couldn't help but raise his hand and cover his eyes. Why didn't you save me? Shirkuizi asked as she walked. His voice was calm and cold as if he was talking about someone else. I helped you. Why didn't you save me? Is it because without me, Lu Gongzhan will wholeheartedly serve as your lackey and work for you? You got what you wanted. Shirkuizi stopped in front of Li Yunxin and suddenly poked her head over. His face was distorted and his facial features were like holes. But why do you have to do this? Why can't he be allowed to live happily, to have a life of his own? Shirkuizi slowly stretched out her hand, took out her internal organs and showed them to Li Yunxin. Look, my heart is red. Your heart, what color is it? Li Yunxin took 2 steps back. He waved his hand, trying to push away the bright red heart in Shirkuizi's hand, but he seemed to be afraid to touch it. I wanted a good idea, I just wanted to do it perfectly. I didn't mean... He took 2 steps back and felt his palm was cold. He touched his face blankly, but he didn't know what was on his face. At this time he heard another person's voice. I know his heart. A second person came in from the other side of the door. She was a woman, but her neck was broken in half, so her head was hanging on her shoulder. So he rolled his eyes and looked at Li Yunxin from the corner of his eyes. She had a bronze mirror in her hand. A brand new bronze mirror, the surface of the mirror glowed with golden light. In this black and white space, it was as eye-catching as the bright red heart in Shirkuizi's hand. Let me look at it. Let me look at his heart. The girl walked to Li Yunxin's side, and twisted her body to look at her mirror. So the mirror reflected Li Yunxin's heart. It was a black heart. It was rotting, flowing with pus. There were even some maggots wriggling. What's black? The girl chuckled. No wonder you wanted to harm me. Do you know how painful it was when my neck was bitten off? Young Master Li, I love you. You are. Li Yunxin opened his mouth. But a name lingered in his mind, but he couldn't see it clearly. You're Yin. Yin, you forgot me, young Master Li? I am Yin Shuero. The girl handed the mirror to Li Yunxin. Look at your heart. No, go away. Li Yunxin took 2 steps back in panic, waving his hands in the air. It's not my business. It's not my business. He wants to harm you. What does it have to do with me? That's not my heart, not my... He looked down when he said that. However, he found that his chest was empty, and even his rotten black heart was gone. Is that my business, little one? A third person walked in from the door. It was the 9th young master, the 9th young master whose body was full of holes and smoke. Kill me, Li Yunxin. Again and again, again and again. The 9th young master opened his empty eyes wide. Is this what I want? Li Yunxin, when did you ever care about me? When did you ever treat people sincerely? When did you ever? I did. Li Yunxin roared. But he felt a pain in his throat and spat out a pile of broken intestines and intestines. I treated Lu Gongzan. The world changed. Black and white blended together and fell down like heavy snow. A picture of white mountain and black water appeared. The black mountain was covered with white snow. There was a small black temple on the top of the mountain and a black pine tree in front of the temple. But the ground was white and dazzling. The black Lu Gongzan and the black Shirkuizi were sitting on the ground, and 2 children were playing beside them. Li Yunxin was stunned. Thus, another gigantic figure appeared. His face was distorted, and his body was surrounded by wind and snow. Every time he breathed, clouds and mist were generated as if he was a god. This terrifying giant appeared high up in the sky and stared at Li Yunxin. It let out a rumbling voice. If it wasn't for you, Li Yunxin, these people would have lived a peaceful life in the city of Wei. They would talk about marriage and have children around their knees. And more people would not have died, not like this. The earth was boiling. Many corpses drilled out of the ground with painful faces and broken limbs. It was an endless tide of corpses, occupying every inch of land that the eyes could see. They let out terrible wails and were in endless pain. They're all people who died because of you, Li Yunxin. The giant said in a low voice, the people of the city of Wei, the people of the wilderness, the people of the Tongtian swamp, the people of the Donghai kingdom, the people of the Wu kingdom, thousands, no hundreds of thousands, millions of people died because of you. Have you ever thought about them, Li Yunxin? Are they insignificant in your eyes? The wailing tide of corpses suddenly quieted down. They turned their faces and looked up at him. They took out their blood-red hearts from their bodies and entrusted them to him, asking him silently. Li Yunxin opened his eyes wide. Then he found himself standing on a mountain of corpses. It was a mountain of corpses that rose from the ground and reached the clouds. Countless stiff arms clamped onto his legs, preventing him from moving at all. And the giant stared at him. You are stepping on so many corpses. Can you still say no? I didn't mean it. Li Yunxin put down his hands that covered his face. Then come, good boy. The giant with a twisted face reached out his hands to him. Are you in pain, good boy? Come to me, and everything will be over. There will be no pain, no regret or guilt. There will be nothing, only eternity. Li Yunxin sobbed and slowly raised his hands. He reached out his hands to the giant. But then he heard a horse neighing. Far away at the border between the white sky and the black earth, a black horse appeared. A knight in black armor sat on the horse, holding a long black knife in his hand. He walked a few steps with the horse and shouted something from afar, but Li Yunxin could not hear it. The corpses all over the ground suddenly became angry and rushed toward the black knight. However, he immediately raised his black blade high and charged towards them from within the corpse tide. Everywhere he went, the corpses melted like snow under the sun, and the earth returned to its original color. Li Yunxin could finally hear what the Black Knight was shouting. The path of 7 kills, advance without retreat and press forward. He shouted loudly, kill living, kill old, kill sick, kill resentment, kill separation, kill not kill. Li Yunxin, look at you. Li Yunxin subconsciously looked at himself. He found that his body was intact, and the mountain of corpses under his feet had disappeared. The giant with a twisted face became angry. He shouted loudly and pressed his feet toward the Black Knight like a mountain. But the knight raised the black knife and swung it with all his strength, and like an ant against the foot of an elephant, he could not move forward anymore. You can't beat me. The knight shouted, I have my own path. Li Yunxin, you have one too. The black and white world suddenly faded away. All the illusions disappeared. Li Yunxin opened his eyes. Seeing Li Chunfeng standing in front of him, his face became even more twisted, and the strange things around him shone with a black light, but it was only a bright light. In the distance he saw 3 people. One riding a black horse, that was Ying Juren. One holding a sword, that was Yu Meng. And a boy with a familiar face, he guessed that it was Su Weng and Su Sheng. Good. Li Chunfeng retracted the black light around him, sneered and looked at Ying Juren. I didn't expect there to be such a stubborn thing like you among you people. It's rare, you can actually ruin my plan. Blame that Rock King. The child said calmly in a tone that did not match his age. He gave Shenmin the way to reincarnate and cultivate the karmic body. And now, the way you want to devour Li Yunxin's mind is the same. It's not difficult for us to send this friend to the battlefield. He turned his face and said loudly, Li Yunxin, I've cultivated the body of desire and suffering, and now I'm going to cultivate the body of joy. What about you? Is your state of mind perfect? He can't be perfect. Li Chunfeng sneered. There are too many things hidden in his heart. Li Yunxin let out a sigh. So you want to use this method to defeat me? You know I have too many things hidden in my heart. And you know I'm not a strong-willed person. Of course I know that. He took another deep breath. That's why I used a method to seal all the things that might make me feel guilty. If I don't think about it and I can't see it, they don't exist. I can also be a cold and decisive person, and deal with all the troubles in front of me. But you know it all. Li Chunfeng, you really know me. But I also have to thank you for helping me just now. Li Yunxin laughed. I just realized it. You, Li Chunfeng, what do you know? You talk about the feelings of the people in this world, but do you really understand them? You're just me in the past, the me in the previous world, like a lonely ghost learning how to live, laugh and feel. Then you think you've seen through everything, but you've never really experienced it. I know my guilt and my regrets can never be erased. But did you know that every real person also has these regrets of guilt? We, the weak and boring creatures in your eyes, make many mistakes in our lives. But we also know that we can't chase the past. The past has become the reality, and the future can only learn from the past. So we'll become better. Li Yunxin's eyes became clear again. He looked at Li Chunfeng. We can't be perfect, but we can always be close to it. We can't make up for our regrets, but we can make them sound like alarm bells. Thank you. In the battle of wills just now, you untied the knot in my heart. Thank you? Li Chunfeng sneered. Why don't you thank me after the dust settles? I just saved some energy just now. If it weren't for these people's interference, you would have surrendered, and I wouldn't have to break you up and reconstruct your soul. Now it seems that I have to spend more energy. You forced me to do this. I'm afraid it won't be easy to kill someone in front of us. Ingjuren drew his long saber on the horse. The path of 7 killings, advance without retreat, go straight. Li Yunxin interrupted him. Your Majesty. Your Majesty, I appreciate your kindness. But I'll solve this matter myself. Brother Yu, Brother Su, Brother Ing, thank you for helping me win. Leave the rest to me. When I kill him later, maybe the surrounding 100 miles will be turned into a sea of fire. You guys go back first. The 2 reincarnated sages nodded slightly without saying a word. They used their supernatural power to capture Ingjuren and his horse and left. Ingjuren said, Fine. My killing intent is here, I can help you. But his voice soon disappeared. In the blink of an eye they were gone. Then let's end this, Li Yunxin said. My patience has finally run out. Great sage. Hit him. Chapter 859. Even though Li Chunfeng's face was twisted, a hint of surprise could still be seen on his face. However, the surprise disappeared in a flash. His gaze locked onto Li Yunxin again. Bluffing. His voice became low. I already know what you're up to. However, the next moment the sky turned dark. Unlike before, it was because of the illusion that caused the surrounding scenery to turn black and white. Instead, it was because the sun had gone out. Brilliant stars appeared in the sky, and a full moon hung high in the sky. At this moment, the entire heavenly sphere was plunged into darkness. The originally brilliant giant fireball in the sky was instantly sucked dry of its energy, turning into a black dot that could still be seen clearly in the night. The black dot stayed in the sky for a while, then fell straight to the ground. Die. Li Chunfeng was stunned for a moment, then immediately attacked Li Yunxin. He didn't hold back this time and poured all his strength into this attack. Because at this moment he realized that the person in front of him, his son, channel, enemy, had indeed prepared something that he didn't expect. Li Yunxin was already prepared. He immediately gathered all the demonic energy in his body to form a restriction in front of him, then used the imperial heavenly scripture to gather the remaining spiritual energy in the world to form a dense, almost tangible light screen. These 2 layers of barriers took Li Chunfeng's attack head-on, and a brilliant glow exploded in the deep darkness. The glow seemed to have ignited something. A blazing sun reignited in the sky. When Li Chunfeng could see it clearly, he realized that the human figure in the sun was wrapped in thick clouds of fire, dazzling light, and an unstoppable, terrifying power. A staff smashed into him. If one looked down from an extremely high place, they would see a sun appearing on the surface of the heavenly sphere. At first, it was a dot of white light, then the white light expanded into a ball of light. After that, half of the heavenly sphere was illuminated, and daylight returned to the earth. At the center of the explosion, the heat and temperature were indescribable. The entire ground had turned into magma, like a fiery sea. Li Chunfeng half knelt above the sea of magma. Only the ground under his feet was still intact. He had returned to his human form. It seemed that maintaining the true body from before also required some energy. And what stopped him from being smashed into a pile of minced meat were the strange things that had appeared around him before. At this moment those things were peeling off and shattering. Li Chunfeng's face turned paler every time he lost a bit of his skin. As for the great sage, now that he had lost his golden armor, only his wild body was revealed. But his body seemed to be made of gold, even every single hair on his body seemed to be made of gold. He held the cudgel in one hand and raised his head slightly. His fiery golden eyes were filled with undisguised disdain. It seemed like he had only used 30% of his strength in the strike that had left Li Chunfeng in a sorry state. Well done, Li Yunxin. The Monkey King widened his eyes and yelled, I didn't expect that I would be refined again. Do you know what happened to the old man who refined me in the furnace last time? He should have been promoted and made a fortune. Where I come from, he is one of the 3 pure ones of Taoism. Li Yunxin jumped up from the edge of the only piece of land above the sea of magma. When he landed, he staggered and lost his balance. So he simply sat down, right next to Li Chunfeng, only 1 step away from him. However, Li Chunfeng didn't react except to glance at him from the corner of his eyes. He was concentrating all his strength to deal with the powerful enemy in front of him. To be more precise, he was dealing with the cudgel of this powerful enemy. Li Yunxin sat steadily, let out a long breath and looked at him. Very powerful. Am I right? Li Yunxin clicked his tongue and answered his own question. Of course he is. Because he absorbed all the energy in the sun that has illuminated this world for tens of thousands of years. When you were talking to me and testing your sword just now, you were checking my injuries. In fact, I was doing the same. So I knew that you were seriously injured and that I, the great sage, would definitely take you down. Li Chunfeng didn't say anything. Li Yunxin reached out his hand and slapped his face hard. The force was so strong that even his head shook slightly. You're smart. He retracted his hand in satisfaction. That's why when I talked to Qinzhao, I first asked about the spirit. After that, she asked me what she and I both knew, but you didn't. Do you know about Journey to the West? In the book, the great sage Heaven's Equal refined in Taishang Laojuan's alchemy furnace for 49 days and developed the fiery eyes. What I asked Qinzhao was whether he could bring his stats over or not. If he could, he would be able to withstand the heat of the sun and use it to replenish his spiritual power. Did you guess it? Looks like you didn't. Li Yunxin paused. You guys aren't omnipotent. No matter what you could do in your previous world, when you come here, you can't imagine what we, who you call weak and useless, can do. Whatever we see, we conquer as far as it is possible to perceive. But how do you know? The Monkey King snorted impatiently. So long-winded, long-winded, long-winded again? Are you going to keep talking for a while? Li Yunxin stood up. I'm not going to talk anymore. Kill him. Ha! The Monkey King's eyes widened. You're happy this time. Because I'm sick of him. A cruel smile appeared on the Monkey King's face. Wonderful. Then he lifted the golden rod and smashed it down again. At this moment, Li Chunfeng's figure seemed to explode. It exploded into countless illusions that ran wildly in all directions. However, when the Monkey King's cudgel fell again, the illusions of those figures seemed to be restrained by an invisible force in an instant and gathered back to their original positions. It was the second time. After a wind-like sigh, the things that represented Li Chunfeng's real name completely collapsed. They turned into withered dust and were quickly blown away by the hot air rolling up from the sea of lava. Li Chunfeng tried to use his hands to catch the rod, but his arms were immediately crushed. In an instant he tilted his head, leaving his head behind. But half of his body was smashed into a bloody mess, and he lay on the ground like a meat patty. The Monkey King frowned. Bad luck. Then he put away the golden rod. Li Yunxin tilted his head. What's wrong? I've done my best. The Monkey King snorted. He's lucky that the second strike didn't kill him. You take care of him yourself. He glanced at him again. But look at you. You can't even protect yourself and I have to suffer. Then he crooked his finger again. The golden rod drew a circle around Li Chunfeng. The circle immediately glowed with a golden light, as if some kind of restriction was used to restrain Li Chunfeng. After that he looked at Li Yunxin. From what you said, there should be a good place in the future. Li Yunxin thought for a moment and smiled. Yes, it's my world. There are a lot of interesting things, and a lot of ashes of the great sage. You'll be happy when you get there. The great sage laughed dryly. That's good, at least it's better than here. I'm sick of this world where demons and ghosts run amok. With that, he turned into a ray of light and flew into Li Yunxin's ear. Li Yunxin was stunned. Then he looked at Li Chunfeng, who was lying motionless on the ground. He paced a few steps around the great sage's circle, then sighed. The great sage doesn't seem very happy. Do you think he's homesick? Mountain of flowers and fruits? However, Li Chunfeng only stared at him as if he had lost all his strength. After a while he finally spoke. Yun? Xan. Listen to me, what? Li Yunxin knelt down next to him and looked at his face. Are you going to tell me that you're actually sincere towards me, and that you have your own difficulties? At this point, do you think I'll still believe you? No? I'll tell you why did I come here. Li Chunfeng used his remaining arm to push his head so that he could look at Li Yunxin. I have a home too. In my previous world. I would also miss home. But I have responsibilities. Li Yunxin smiled. So that means your world really isn't destroyed. That's why you can't kill me? Li Chunfeng gritted his teeth. Yunexin, the world I came from, you can't imagine how strong it was. In the past, a long time ago, we encountered the same situation as this world. But we survived, we found a way out, and we became a great empire. A great empire that continuously expanded in both space and time. Even in this state, the strength of the Grand Supreme Realm was still evident. In just a few words, Li Chunfeng's half-flattened body began to wriggle, as if he was about to recover. His speech also became smoother, no longer as weak and powerless as before. There was a light in his eyes, a light of awe and glory. And I am only one of the countless outposts and explorers of this great empire. Yunexen, from the moment I came to this world, I've left a mark here. I am that mark. Whether I'm alive or dead, the mark already exists. Li Yunxin was silent for a moment. When you say expanding in time and space, you mean, space refers to countless small universes, like the universe of this world and the universe of your world. As for time, Yunexin, you should know that the erosion of the rules of chaos not only happens in the present, but also in the future and the past, and we, too, will expand into the future and the past of a world. Yunexin, you don't know? Then all the more reason for me to kill you, said Li Yunxin. Whether you die or not, you've left a mark in this world. And then it will draw the power or people from your world here. Then what's the point of keeping you alive? No, there's something else. Li Chunfeng could even use one arm to prop himself up slightly. He stared at Li Yunxin. If you want to save this world, and bring it back to your world, then your world will also be marked with my mark, and your world will be exposed. Ha! Li Yunxin let out a sigh and stared at him gloomily. So, haven't you realized, Yunexin? Li Chunfeng said eagerly. You humans are now on the way to becoming an empire like ours. Li Yunxin was stunned and seemed to be interested in what he said. What do you mean? The people of this world, the people in the heavenly sphere, the people who escaped, the people who wandered in the universe, and the people from your world, what are you? Haven't you realized? You're a whole. On the scale of the whole universe, race, religion, country, and even the difference between small universes are no longer important. Everything is defined by a single species. You're all humans, and on the scale of the big universe, you're a whole, and now you're expanding in time and space. Haven't you realized? Li Yunxin thought for a moment. Oh, that seems to be the case. So, what does it have to do with keeping you alive? Because you're a whole, you're still a child. The half of Li Chunfeng's body that had been blown apart had regained some of its original shape, and he could even sit up. It's rare to see a civilization that can form an empire like you guys, but it's not like there aren't any. Do you know how many similar civilizations our empire has fought against, and how many have been destroyed? Some of them appeared early but they stagnated. Some of them had great potential but they took a detour, but I know a lot of things. I can help you avoid some detours, I can? He paused at this point, because three figures appeared out of thin air, at the edge of the small island in the sea of lava. They were Qin Zhao, Bai Yanjun, and Black Yama King. The three of them looked at him and Li Yunxin silently. Save me. Li Chunfeng immediately called for help. You heard me. I've confessed everything, I'm still useful, but Black Bai Yanjun remained silent. Only Qin Zhao spoke. Li Yunxin, what do you plan to do? Li Yunxin stood up. His gaze swept past the three of them and he smiled. What? Are you really here to save him? Qin Zhao sighed softly. You should know that we've been helping you, we made him think that he had our support. Including the three from before, we were the ones who sent them here. And they let you win in the battle of wills. What he said just now is what we've always wanted to know. Li Yunxin looked at her. But, as usual, he used me. Qin Zhao nodded. We apologize to you. Then my answer is that I'm going to kill him, Li Yunxin said seriously. Because he hurt my feelings. As revenge for you. Li Yunxin, Bai Yanjun couldn't help but speak. Just because of this? Is there no other reason? I used to believe you. But now, I don't think you're the impulsive person you used to be. Li Yunxin looked at him. Okay. Then the second reason is that, whether it's me, you, or even the people he mentioned as a whole, none of us should be threatened or coerced by anyone. This person. He pointed at Li Chunfeng. He's capricious and has no bottom line. He's not one of us, so in our knowledge, any method that can restrain him will not work, except death. No? No, no, no. Li Chunfeng shouted. Yunxin, I've been a human for 1,000 years. I've learned many things, but because of responsibility. Li Yunxin sneered. But he still didn't look at him. Okay. Speaking of responsibility, I don't think anyone knows it better than that sage over there. You can ask him now and hear his opinion. But I think he'll agree with me. The three figures in the air glanced at each other. Then Qin Zhao closed his eyes. About 3 breaths later, a dot of light appeared in the air. The dot of light turned into a human figure. It was a man. Compared to the 3 people here, excluding the black and white Yama lords, he was a man with an ordinary appearance. But he had a pair of bright eyes and a steel-like will. He exchanged a brief look with Li Yunxin, then shifted his gaze to Li Chunfeng and then looked away. I'm Li Zhen, the man said to Li Yunxin seriously. Thank you for everything you've done for us. You're right. Humans don't have to compromise with anything. Then he said to Li Chunfeng, we've killed a deity before. If necessary, we can do it again. Then the image disappeared. He can only stay for so long, Qin Zhao said with a disappointed expression. Disappointment flashed across Qin Zhao's face. This is very difficult for him right now. Li Yunxin, this also means that we are sorry. He agrees with you. Okay. Li Yunxin was silent for a while. Then he took a deep breath and turned around. Li Chunfeng's eyes widened. His body recovered instantly. The remaining power and the newly obtained power of will turned him into a ball of gray light and tried to escape. But the great sage's restriction stopped him. The 3 people on the other side also acted at the same time. The power of 4 Grand Supreme locked him in place. He was frozen in the air in the shape of the Chinese character. He wailed and revealed his twisted face. Yunexin, patricide. Yunexin, when you... But Li Yunxin stabbed his chest with his claw. As a result, the body turned into something similar to a stone statue, and because of Li Yunxin's action of pulling her hand out, it turned into dust and dispersed. He looked at the heart in his palm, the heart that was also rapidly eroding away, and smiled. He really doesn't have a heart. The sea of lava surged and roared. Li Yunxin looked up and saw the bright stars in the night sky. It was night now. And because the sun disappeared, the night would exist for a long time until something new came to replace it. He was silent for a long time. The 3 people didn't leave either. They looked at him quietly. Then he slowly sat on the ground and sighed. He has the 9th young master's dragon soul in his body. His body is gone. The 9th young master should go find the evil lord. But the evil lord is trapped in Li Chunfeng's original body. It should be gone now. These 2 should be in the other dragon son's body. The Black Yama King, who hadn't spoken yet, said, we will find them for you. Yunshan is still up there. Bai Yanjun said, we will take care of this. Okay, Li Yunxin said. Okay. Then I'll have to trouble you. I'm really too tired. His body tilted and he fell asleep in the warm embrace of the world. Chapter 860. This was just another beginning. The sky was filled with small suns. Each of them was as cute as the light bulbs in his world. In the 5 years after the battle of the Supreme that brought a terrible disaster to this world, the entire world was illuminated by them. But at least, the daytime in this world was no different from before. People said that the leader of the dragon cult had refined the body of the dead evil god to bring warmth and light to this world. But soon, people didn't need to count how many suns there were in the sky today. Because tens of thousands of meters in the sky, the repaired former sun was undergoing its final adjustment. If one used their magic power to look, they could see that the shuttles there were busy like a swarm of bees. They were surrounding the unactivated singularity that was as dark as a black hole. Li Yunxin retracted his gaze and looked down the hill. It was already midsummer. The weeds on the slope were green and surged in waves in the wind. Further away there was a farmhouse hidden in a peach forest. But he didn't go down. He just looked at it from afar for a while and sat down again. Next to him was a piece of cloth that didn't move in the warm summer wind. On the cloth lay 3 Celadon wine bottles and 2 half-eaten plates of side dishes. It didn't look like the cooking of a famous restaurant chef. The thickness of the dishes were different, the length was uneven, and they didn't look very delicious. There was also the fragrance of flowers in the warm wind. Apart from the faint sound of the wind, there was the sound of birds in the distance. Li Yunxin took out another bottle of wine from his sleeve, squinted at the farmhouse, and drank it slowly in a quarter of an hour. Then he sat for a while intending to get up. But he saw a woman in white walk out of the farmhouse and up the hill. He was slightly stunned, but he didn't move. The woman walked slowly and quickly. In 5 or 6 steps, she reached his side. She stood and looked at him for a while, then sat down on the other side of the cloth. The two of them sat in silence in the wind. Until Bai Yunxin spoke first. The first time you came here 5 years ago, it was because you killed Li Chunfeng. The second time you came here 2 years ago, it was because you wanted to marry Li Xinyu like a mortal. What is it for this time? Li Yunxin smiled. I have a child. She was silent for a moment. Congratulations. Thank you. Li Yunxin broke a stalk of grass and slowly twirled it in his hand. It's my daughter. Her name is Rose. Li Qiangwei. Bai Yunxin repeated softly. This name? She took it. She likes roses this year, so she planted them all over the yard. The wind slowly died down. An eagle circled leisurely in the sky, then suddenly plunged into the distance. She didn't blame you for killing Li Chunfeng. I should have wanted to see you. Actually, you can go and see her. Forget it. Li Yunxin sighed. This is good. Bai Yunxin nodded and took out a small doodoo from her sleeve. There was a blooming peony embroidered on it. The embroidery was not very good. This is, she embroidered it. Bai Yunxin chuckled. I went to Wei City to see you guys a few days ago. Okay. Li Yunxin took the doodoo and put it in his sleeve. The two sat for a while. How long will it take? We'll have to wait for another 10 years. Li Yunxin stared at the farmhouse in the distance and said, It's very difficult to convert this world and the chaotic world outside to release energy and make sure that the energy is restrained before the annihilation ends. I went there a few days ago. Qin Zhao said that 10 years is the most ideal time. I think 20 or 30 years is also possible. But I don't understand these things. Let's just wait for them. Bai Yunxin smiled. I thought you'd have a big fight with them because of Li Chunfeng, maybe to the netherworld. Li Yunxin was silent for a while and shook his head. I knew it at the time. Li Zhen is just their symbol and belief. He might not have the energy to do the specific things. Qin Zhao should be in charge. Li Chunfeng has secrets and knowledge. To them he's a treasure trove, another insurance when they leave this world. They won't ask me to kill him just like that. But it doesn't matter. Their attitude at the time was good and they took care of my feelings. Then Qin Zhao took his soul out, which was also within my expectations. I just wanted to vent my anger. I was still young back then. He paused. Plus, that person is now restrained in a jar. He'll probably suffer and the world will be destroyed. It'll be more painful than death. Oh, Bai Yunxin said. She seemed to have no more interest in this matter, so she broke a blade of grass. Li Yunxin turned to look at her and saw the side of her face shimmering in the bright sunlight. After a while he said, Then I should go. Bai Yunxin let go of the blade of grass and turned her head. I want something from you. Will you give it to me? Li Yunxin was stunned. But he thought about it and said, I'll give it to you if I can. I want an incarnation of you. He was stunned. After a while he frowned. You mean, an incarnation with a bit of your demonic essence? Li Yunxin exhaled softly and looked at her seriously. 5 years had passed. Time had not left any traces on these transcendental existences. But now he also realized that she hadn't changed at all inside. You don't have to feel troubled. Bai Yunxin smiled. I saw Li Xinyu when I went to visit you a few days ago. She knows about this. There was an agreement between her and me. 5 years ago you said that agreement had nothing to do with you, but now our agreement has nothing to do with you either. Li Yunxin was about to speak, but she raised her hand and pressed a finger against his lips. I know. But you killed my father. She stared at him. You should compensate me. Li Yunxin looked at her for a while and saw that her eyes had turned brown because of the sunlight. The breeze blew the fine hair on her face, just like when the Red Lady was in the wooden pavilion at the foot of Mount June. He stood up, put his hands behind his back and walked 2 steps away. He looked at the farmhouse for a while and then turned his face. "Let me think about it," he said seriously. "Give me some time." "Okay." There was a wooden pavilion beside the newly built official road. There was a stone tablet beside the pavilion. The words Qingzhou Ningyuan Station Tablet were engraved on it. There was a stagecoach parked on the right side of the official road. This was a new thing that had appeared in recent years. It was a long wooden body with 3 pairs of wheels and 5 or 6 open windows. But there were no horses in front of the cart. It was not pulled by animals. There were more than a dozen people around the cart. They looked like ordinary people. Only one of them was wearing a black uniform with silver edges and a flat hat. He was the carriage officer. He was usually arrogant, but now he was standing together with the ordinary people, stretching his neck to look at the cart. Because the front of the stagecoach was opened, revealing the complex structure inside. The inside was densely covered with metal or wooden devices engraved with talismans. They combined to form a power core that would make people dizzy. A man was busy there for a while. He stood up and said something, then closed the cover of the front. So the carriage officer got on the cart with a dignified expression. After a while, the stagecoach shook slightly, drove a short distance and stopped again. Okay. The carriage officer, who was supposed to be unsmiling, stuck his head out and said happily. He opened the door and jumped down, bowing to the man. "Thank you, immortal master." The man smiled slightly and waved his hand. The ordinary people got on the cart from the back door. At this time, Li Yunxin walked out of the pavilion and asked, "What's wrong?" "Just a small matter," Lu Gongzan said with a smile. "There must be a problem with some talisman engraved in the cart. But I didn't understand it, so I just drew a talisman on it. It's good that it can run." While they were talking, the two also got on the cart. The carriage was spacious and the smell was not bad. There were 2 fixed benches by the window which could seat 30 to 40 people. But seeing the clothes of the 2 of them and seeing what Lu Gongzan had done earlier, the ordinary people gathered at the other end of the carriage, consciously leaving enough space for the 2 nobles. The 2 of them sat firmly, and they heard the carriage officer in front ask respectfully, "Immortal master, is it done?" Lu Gongzan responded, and the cart started to move bumpily. "You used a talisman for this cart?" Li Yunxin said with a smile. "Now your talisman is not ordinary. I heard that 2 of your disciples fought over your talisman a month ago." Lu Gongzan sighed softly. "They are both good children. But they are too arrogant and arrogant. After that they regretted it. I thought about it and punished one of them to go to the Sea of Firestone to repair the seal there, and punished the other to help out in Qingdu for a year. Tempering oneself in the secular world should improve one's temperament. If one stays on the mountain for too long, they will not eat the food of the common people, and young people will become complacent." "Yes." Lu Gongzan glanced at him. "At this speed it will take us 3 days to get to the city of Wei. Brother Xn, now you really walk and the food and drink are also real. You have lived as a mortal for 4 or 5 years, but you are still not tired of it." Li Yunxin smiled. "Life needs a sense of ceremony. And there are roses." He paused. "In the future, when the children grow up and find that their parents do not eat or drink, it will be difficult to develop good habits. It is not good for physical and mental development." Listening to his serious words, Lu Gongzan couldn't help laughing. But then he stopped laughing. "What's wrong?" Li Yunxin stopped laughing. He was silent for a while and sighed softly. "By Yunxin. She asked me for something." "What?" "An incarnation of my demonic primordial." Li Yunxin said. "Even the idol fish knows about this." "Oh." Lu Gongzan dragged out the sound in a low voice and leaned against the carriage. After a while he said, "Actually this thing. Brother Xn, I didn't know how to talk about it in the past. Now that it has been brought up, I will say a few more words. You are in this world now. I know it is not good in your previous world, but in this world it is not rare. Moreover, they made a promise at the critical moment of life and death, and at that time they were sincere. Now that they have brought it up again, it can be seen that they are sincere." Li Yunxin waved his hand. "What others do in this world has nothing to do with me." Lu Gongzan smiled. "That's true. But there is a difference in this matter. Brother Xn, what she wants is your demonic primordial incarnation, not you as a person. You should know what she wants. Speaking of which, her father died in your hands. After that, without you, she went to live with your mother. It is not an exaggeration to say that she served you. In this world, she has fulfilled her duty as a daughter-in-law of a secular family. Otherwise, you would not have visited your mother only 3 times in 5 years. Because she told you not to worry. Your mother lost her husband and son and missed by lost. They can be considered as two lonely people. You also know that she has fulfilled her duty as a son for you. Well, I know that for you, this kind of responsibility is not the same as the responsibility of ordinary people, but listen to me, since you know all these things, it is not right for you to do nothing. Lu Gongzan raised his hand and gently patted his knee. You should give her company. Li Yunxin let out a long sigh, leaned against the carriage and stared at the ceiling for a long time. Then he raised his hand and pulled out a hair. He twirled the black hair between his fingers a few times and then flicked it. The thin hair flew out of the window. Lu Gongzan laughed. Li Yunxin turned to look at him. You have to come to the banquet the day after tomorrow. Of course. What about little Jiao? Lu Gongzan laughed twice. He was angry that you killed him and Li Chunfeng together. At that time he didn't even say a word. But it has been 5 years, all his anger has subsided. Guess what is the most common sentence he said this year? He is my brother-in-law. Lu Gongzan smiled and shook his head. He will also come that day. Don't worry. As for Lord Dongting, I have not been able to find him. Forget it. Things don't always go as one wishes. Li Yunxin thought for a moment, then coughed. Well, when you come, book a table at Munanju or Xiaoyanlu. Just say that I don't know. Lu Gongzan was stunned for a moment and then he laughed. Now you should be regretting making that, whatever integrated stove. I really didn't expect that she would be obsessed with it. Li Yunxin spread out his hands. I also didn't expect that she has no talent at all. The two smiled together. Chapter 861. The bamboo house built 15 years ago still looked new. The only difference was that there was a forest between the farmlands and the bamboo house in the distance like a wall. This forest wall and the bamboo forest on the other side wrapped around the bamboo house and a large piece of flat grass in front of it, forming a slightly more private space. In the courtyard in front of the bamboo house, roses were planted along the fence. The branches of the roses were long and climbed up the bamboo fence. From afar, it looked like a circle of green decorated with yellow, white and pink flowers. The sky was clear and bright, but the area above the bamboo house was densely covered with dark clouds. Lightning snakes swam in the dark clouds, thunder rumbled, but there was no rain. There were a few children in the courtyard, and the happiest one was a girl, a beautiful girl who looked like she was carved out of jade. She looked like she was about 10 years old and wore a lake green dress. Now she was looking up, clapping her hands, laughing and shouting, "Ninth uncle, louder, louder." There was a flash of cold light from the scales in the dark clouds, and there was another muffled thunder, shaking the ground 3 times. The girl was even happier, but the 2 little girls around her, about 8 or 9 years old, covered their ears and crouched down. The girl saw that they were very dissatisfied and put her hands on her waist. "What are you afraid of?" "That is my uncle. You are the princesses of the Rong kingdom and you are even afraid of thunder." The slightly older girl pouted and said, "We are leaving tomorrow. We don't want to play here, it is not fun at all." The girl in the lake green dress snorted, "How is it not fun? Is your rouge silk flower so fun? It is so boring. If you dare to leave, father said that he will teach me thunder magic in another year, and then I will go to Rong City to scare you." The 2 girls pouted and didn't dare to say anything. At this time Li Xinyu came out of the house and said to the sky, "Ninth brother, it's done. Don't spoil her. She is getting more and more lawless. Qiangwei, don't scare your sisters." "Mother," Li Qiangwei blinked and said coquettishly, "I am training my sister's courage. Besides," she sighed, "father doesn't take me out to play. He only takes me out to play. Ninth uncle only knows how to explode thunder, unlike father." The dark clouds in the sky immediately dispersed. The 9th young master flew down and landed in the yard. He stared at Li Qiangwei and said, "Li Qiangwei, why do I only know how to explode bombs? I know a lot, for instance, Daddy built me a crystal palace under the East Sea last time." Li Qiangwei made a face at him. "And my cloud throne is in the sky. For my birthday this year you promised to give me a painting of Lilliput. Ninth uncle, what are you going to give me this year?" The 9th young master suddenly looked to his left and right. His face turned cold. "Not good. There's a drought in Jizhou. Little sister, I have to go take care of business." "Let's go." Li Qiangwei stomped her feet. But in the end she was still unable to fly. She could only watch as her 9th uncle transformed into a gust of demonic wind and rushed into the sky. Li Xinyu laughed, "Chu Ertan, come inside and have some snacks. Tell this crazy girl to play by herself." The two little princesses of the Rome kingdom looked at each other and said hurriedly, "Ah, we want to train our courage with Sister Qiangwei." And Li Qiangwei laughed evilly. She grabbed one of her sisters and ran away. Li Yunxin stood at the top of the mountain. This was the highest peak in the vicinity of Rome City. It was surrounded by clouds and rugged rocks. But the pine trees were also green with a sense of transcendence. He looked at the direction of the city of Wei thousands of miles away for a while. Then he looked away. "Yes. Next year I will teach you the Rose Thunder method." "Yin, I haven't taught you cultivation yet. Do you blame me?" Behind him stood a boy who was also about 10 years old. He wore a green Taoist robe made of coarse cloth. It was slightly torn and had mud stains. There were slight scratches on his hands, which were hanging by his side. But they were white and there was no blood. After listening to his words, he thought for a while and said seriously, "Father must have his own plan." Li Yunxin looked at him and laughed. "Your mother blamed me for planting inhibition in her demonic aura. As a result, you couldn't cultivate after you were born. But let me tell you today, inhibition is just an inhibition. I can plant it and I can dispel it. But I can only dispel it when I get it." The boy who was the same age as Li Qiangwei had a calm and mature face that didn't match his age. But even so, he couldn't help showing a happy expression when he heard this. "Really?" "Of course it's true." Li Yunxin sat down and looked at him. "Now let me test you. Why do you think I don't let you cultivate?" The boy restrained his happy expression and thought for a while seriously. "Father took me to travel around the world since I was young. He took me through mountains and rivers and showed me the customs of the human world. Yin, you should let me experience the sufferings of the human world and know how difficult it is for the people in the world. In the future, when I have the ability, I can benefit the world, the people." Li Yunxin laughed and reached out to rub his head. "Don't talk nonsense like what Lu Gongzan taught you. Let me ask you, what do you think about yourself?" The boy was stunned. After a long time he said, I. Li Yunxin nodded. "Well, it's not your fault. You can't understand it yourself. When I was your age or even when I was older than you, I didn't understand it either." He was silent for a while and said, "What you said just now are all about extroversion. Thinking about other people and the world. But I want you to understand something about introversion. A person must understand himself before he can talk about others. Possessing power too early will make people impatient and easily lose their nature. In the first few years before you were born, there were still cultivators in the world like Daotong and Kenzo. They started cultivating when they were young, ignored the affairs of the world and abandoned their emotions. In the end, they cultivated until they were neither human nor ghost and became monsters." The boy's eyes widened. These people, what happened to them now?" "They were killed." The boy was silent. But Li Yunxin's eyes lit up. Li Yunxin smiled and flicked his nose. "What are you thinking about? It's not just me. Your uncles and aunts all had a share." The boy touched his nose and said seriously, "But it must be you, father, who did the most." "That's..." Li Yunxin coughed. "Let's not talk about this. Oh, that's why I told you to be immortal first. But in fact you can't be considered immortal. You were born with the body of a profound realm great demon. Although you didn't learn any cultivation techniques, the demon power you cultivated is still in your body, but it was suppressed by my restriction. You have my demon essence in your body and one day, you may even become a Grand Supreme. But the reason why I told you to get hurt, feel pain, have no strength and want to sleep, is that I want you to be able to feel it. Feel what ordinary people experience and what kind of feelings they have. In this way your mind will be healthy and you can quickly adapt to this world. You don't have to be like people like us who have lost a lot and made a lot of mistakes before suddenly waking up." The boy looked like he understood but not really. After all, he was still a child and hadn't been baptized by time. He couldn't understand what the things this father in front of him had experienced meant, and how it could change a person. But he was indeed thinking seriously. After a while he said, "I don't understand some of it, but I will remember Father's words." "Father, why are you telling me this today?" He thought for a while. Then Sister Rose, she was originally calmer, Li Yunxin said, because of her mother. "So, I taught her cultivation slowly because I didn't want her to become gloomy and submissive. But now it seems a little too much, so I have to discipline her. This is also what I want to say to you today. You are very sensible but don't suppress your temperament. Girls who were more carefree and naive were very cute. But if a boy is also unrestrained and has no inhibitions, well..." He paused. "There's nothing bad about it. It's just that it will cause a lot of trouble. It's better to have less trouble, right? Alright, let's not talk about this." I just hope that you have your own temperament, but won't become a monster. Understand how to understand other people's feelings. As for why I'm telling you this today, it's because I may be very busy these days. I may not be able to take you everywhere. This world is going to usher in a big change. The boy was like all children of his age when he heard the word change. His eyes shone with curiosity and expectation. What big change? Some things will come. Li Yunxin slowly stood up and looked up at the sky. Didn't you always say that you want to see how I used to fight with enemies? Maybe you will see it soon. Enemies? Father is the strongest person in the central continent. How can there be enemies? Li Yunxin faced the strong wind on the mountain peak and laughed. Not enemies in this world. But enemies that were slowly led here by a bad person a long time ago. Some fools who think they are strong. The boy was stunned. He was about to speak again, but he heard Li Yunxin say, I'll send you down the mountain, undo some of the restrictions on you and go back to find your mother. When it's over, I'll teach you thunder spells too. As soon as he finished, the boy's figure disappeared. At this time, the clear sky suddenly darkened. It was an oval area. If one ignored the distance and pulled this area to the ground, it might take up a quarter of the area of central continent. Qin Zhao's figure was now beside Li Yunxin, and he also looked up at the sky. The shadow was getting heavier. You're really free, Li Yunxin. Qin Zhao sighed. You still have to take your son to climb the mountain at this time. Li Yunxin smiled. At what time? Haven't you been preparing for 15 years? If you can't even deal with this, I don't think there's any hope in the future. Plus, I promised him to take him to Jingting Mountain. He paused. The destruction and rebirth of this world only take a moment. They shouldn't be able to feel the change. Alas, thinking about it this way, it's a pity. As the savior, I should accept everyone's worship. Qin Zhao only smiled and patted his shoulder. Don't be nervous. Over the past 15 years, Li Chunfeng has revealed everything he knows. But in reality he was premeditated and said some things step by step. Then he guided Shenmu to use the information he said to carry out spacetime experiments, and finally achieve the results he wanted. 15 years of experiments, step by step, he formed a beacon to guide the vanguard of his so-called empire's outpost in this space. I've thought about what the vanguard will look like when they come here, but I didn't expect it to be like this. It's probably the result of adapting to our world. At this point, something happened to the shadow. It turned slightly white. It was difficult for other people in this world to see clearly, but the two Grand Supreme experts on the mountain peak could see clearly. There were fingerprints. On the unimaginably large shadow, there were also unimaginably large fingerprints. This meant that the shadow was actually caused by a finger touching the layer of things on the periphery of this world. Li Yunxin looked at the thing and then at Qin Zhao. Why are you saying this? Didn't you tell me long ago? You played along and attracted those things, then asked them to participate in the annihilation. You can provide us with energy and catch all the guests from afar. Li Chunfeng outsmarted himself. Why are you saying it to me again? Qin Zhao looked at him calmly. You know, but they don't. Just then another shadow appeared. First, dozens of dots covered the entire sky, covering the horizon on one side and the other. Then more shadows piled on top of each other. Finally the sky darkened. There was more hands. It was as if there was more than one cosmic giant whose head was the size of a heavenly ball. They were stretching their hands towards this space to crush it. The next moment, a blurry face appeared in the sky, occupying the entire sky. The twisted mouth slowly opened, as if it was about to let out an angry roar. Qin Zhao whispered, It's time. Don't, Li Yunxin sighed. I'm actually a bit nervous. He took out the painting from his sleeve and let it hover in front of him. Then he half knelt on the ground, one hand on the painting and the other on the rock under his feet. Because the painting for Rose still has a lot of details that I didn't finish, that's what gives me the biggest headache. The world went dark. The ball suddenly disappeared from its original position and turned into a ball of pure light. This ball of light only existed for one Planck time, which was 1 to the minus 43 seconds. During this time the astral plane outside the ball was opened. The strange matter and chaotic laws in the chaotic universe were annihilated by the light of this universe. Also annihilated were 13 humanoid beings that were large enough to swallow half of the heavenly sphere in one gulp. They had just crossed over from another universe and appeared for about 15 seconds. The terrifying annihilation transformed everything within a range of 5 light years into pure energy within 2 Planck's time. This energy spread outwards and came into contact with the matter of this universe further away, triggering an even more violent chain reaction. This reaction might last for thousands of years. wiping out everything within a million light-years before it slowly calmed down, shrank, and collapsed. However, at the moment when the annihilation first occurred, all the beings that originally lived on the small heavenly sphere completely left this universe. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.